Okay. Okay, it is 6:01, March 22nd, 2022. I call this meeting of the Wellfleet Select Board to order in accordance with the temporary suspension and enhancement of the open meeting laws allowed by the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The first order of business is announcements, open session and public comments. The board will not deliberate on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Are there any?
Yeah, Ryan?
Yep,
Could
go
you
ahead,
please-
Helen.
Oh, could you please announce for the public when we're going to go back to in-person meeting? It's in April and I forget the date, but now
It depends on when the equipment is installed.
got it. Okay, I thought we had a date, sorry.
We have a tentative date towards the end of April. It's not set in stone at this moment. They are still waiting for equipment to arrive. So,
Got it.
okay, are there any others at this time? Okay, I guess I just have one. So the select board earlier today voted on our preferred choice for the next town administrator. And the board chose Richard Waldo. And we look forward to getting him on board soon. I would say we still have to negotiate the contract with him, but I think he would be a valuable addition to town government, and he is very familiar with the Outer Cape. He's a local resident, and he's currently the DPW director in the town of Provincetown. So he's very aware of, all of our peculiarities, I would say. So that would be my only announcement, except that he is also really excited to come on board. So, okay. So with that, we are on to the consent agenda. So I'm going to actually make a motion. Or are there any objections to the consent agenda? Okay. So I'm going to move to adopt the agenda as printed.
Ellen, second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please. Janet, you're muted.
Hear me before? Okay, okay.
Yep. yeah,
Janet, I.
Okay. Mike has his hand up. Yeah, I'll mute him.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi. Is my video coming on? No,
not yet.
No.
it's broken, I think. Anyways, I just wanted to say the Bagel Hound is going to be opening a bagel shop in South Wellfleet, and normally they'd get to present not under a consent agenda. And I just want to welcome them to town. They'll be a good addition. They're going to be opening in the place by JB's, where JB's used to be. So just for everyone to know and the board to know that, and Ellery, I think is here on the meeting.
Okay.
But I'm fine with the consent agenda.
Okay. No, I can
So
kind of
aye.
roll. Okay. John?
Janet, I said I, right?
Yeah.
You got
John?
that? Okay.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, and just so it's clear to anybody who might be on, this includes the appointments of David Blackman to the Wellfleet Cultural Council, the appointment of Maura Meehan to the Wellfleet Cultural Council, and the appointment of Judith Cumler to the COA Advisory Board as well. So thank you.
Weekend entertainment license and seasonal liquor licenses.
Yeah, and those as well. Okay, so Suzanne, let's see.
And Ryan, I have a
Yep.
motion when we're ready.
Yeah, Suzanne?
She's
And then,
probably not expecting to go on this early.
Yeah, and then Helen McNeil. Can you unmute both of them?
I asked to unmute, they just haven't yet.
Okay,
I'm unmuted. Thank you.
okay. And okay, there's Helen.
Right. Okay, so I've raised my hand. Well, I'm really honored to be able to present this to you. About 3 weeks ago, the town of Truro adopted an almost identical resolution that I had presented to them with support from members of the Wampanoag Nation, officially restoring to them ancient and Aboriginal rights to recreate on beaches. They had previously already received a recognition of rights, I think in 1981 or 1982 by the Massachusetts legislature to be able to hunt, fish, and trap on all publicly owned land, but it didn't include being able to recreate. So when I was curating the exhibition at the Highland House Museum in Truro and checking on the, I guess, the situation of the Wampanoag Nation at the present, I thought it was bizarre that that Native people can hunt, fish, and trap, but they can't actually sit down or have a swim. So this is an effort to officially restore rights that in one sense should never have been seen as having been taken away. I would like to make one comment about the wording. The wording of the resolution does duplicate what I presented to Truro, except that what Truro ended up passing also included the words "and other Native nations." In other words, it didn't restrict the ability to use the beaches to members of the Wampanoag Nation. It also permitted registered members of other nations, if they should wish, to use the beaches. So I'll leave it to your discussion at this point.
Okay. Suzanne?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yes, I think this is an admirable and pretty late come to the party declaration that I'm urging the select board to make it this time. I can only say that I totally support it and I urge you to adopt it.
Okay, Cheryl Jaffe, or how do you say, Cheryl, can you
Yes.
correct me on how to pronounce your last name?
Jaffe is correct.
Jaffe, all right, I never
you.
know.
Jaffe, you got it right the first time. I would just like to agree with Suzanne and also with Helen. And I think it's really important that the wording include other nations, because often within the same family, someone is Wampanoag and Nipmuc for various reasons, divorce, children, marriage, and there are many tribes that within the same family represent more than one tribal nation. So it would be a shame to have, the driver be able to go and park, but the children or the, I don't know how it would work out exactly, but I just want to support that change in the wording as well as support the whole, the declaration.
Okay, so I move to amend the draft declaration. So the first sentence reads, the Wellfleet Select Board, on behalf of the citizens of Wellfleet, return to the people of the Wampanoag Nation and other, what's the correct term?
Native nations.
And other Native nations, now and forever, their custom and practice to recreate on beaches owned or managed by the town of Wellfleet without cost or fee upon presentation of a current tribal card. And the rest shall continue as drafted. Is it-
I
is there-
second that, but
Yeah.
you can just take out Wampanoag Nation there and just say, but, see, I mean, we have other tribes on the Cape, by the way. So,
That's what they're saying.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah,
well,
that's
take
it.
out Wampanoag and just have it be, First Nations, or what was the phrase? First Nations?
Native nations.
I think I had put Wampanoag there because they are the, you know, the far and away the main native people of Cape Cod. And I felt it would be, I don't know, polite or appropriate to name them, but I wouldn't jump up and down on that if anyone wanted to say all native nations.
Yep.
So I would agree with that first motion of keeping Wampanoag and then adding the other nations, the other First Nations. And I would second that, yeah.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I would second it as amended that way. I'd see no reason to leave Wampanoag out. And why don't we just vote on it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so can I have a roll call vote on the amendment?
Janet, right? Janet, yes.
John, aye.
It looks like we lost Mike. Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
He's coming back on right now.
Yeah. All right, I'll give him a second.
And
Yeah, I just want to give him the opportunity to vote on the amendment. We still have to vote to issue the declaration, if that's your question, Helen.
yeah,
Okay.
Mike, do you know we're waiting for your vote?
No, I got kicked off here. So Michael, I.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I move on the behalf of the citizens of Wellfleet, returns to issue the declaration as drafted or as amended.
As amended.
second, Helen, I. Helen second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, aye.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
And welcome to your 20-minute flow.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Suzanne,
Yes, sir.
amendment to the
Amendment?
yeah, to the beach reg, or to the beach regulations.
I would just recommend that it echo what the declaration says and add the words "and other native nations."
Okay, so I move to amend,
And the commitment to presence was
that's Mike. That's what you're watching. All right, I move to amend Wellfleet's beach rules and regulations as drafted with the following amendment. So where it reads 9, a member of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, to instead read a member of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe or other native nation under the conditions set in the Wellfleet Tribal Rights
Helen
Access
second.
Declaration. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, aye.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Helen, for bringing
Well,
this
listen,
up.
thank you, because this now means that there's a run from Eastham, Wellfleet, Truro to Provincetown, where native people can now recreate and use the beaches as they did for thousands of years. So this is fabulous. Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
So at this time, I open the public hearing on grant license number 792.
Mr. Chair,
Yep,
I'd like to officially recuse myself from this. I will not be participating as a select board member.
okay. Let's see, 1 second. And Rebecca Ruffley, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Let's see if she's on. She's here.
Hang on, she should be.
Yep.
Sorry, there's chaos like at
Yeah.
this moment in my house. I apologize.
All right, there's town council Greg Corbo. sorry, I meant to discuss this earlier with you today. What's your recommendation as to how to proceed?
Are you asking me or Greg?
I guess you and Greg.
Well, I think that, I mean, it's a public hearing, so I think that you should give ARC a chance to speak. And then I think that the board should speak, and then I think you should give the department heads a chance to speak, and then the public to speak, a chance
Okay.
to speak. Is that what you were looking for, was the format, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
in the order that we might want to follow. So I know that we had discussed it and
Yeah, I think ARC was the applicant, so I would give them a chance to speak. Sorry about my camera being off, everybody.
yeah, no worries. Is a representative from ARC on here? Oh, there's Rick. So Rick Sawyer, are there other members of ARC on the call as well?
Can we get rid of this television or whatever's in the background?
What was that?
Yeah, that's good now. I got it. Rick, are there other members of ARC on here that should be unmuted?
They are here. I don't know that they're going to speak or anything, but there are a few here.
Okay, so if anybody from ARC wants to speak, all they have to do is raise their hand. All right. So Rick. What is the reason for ARC to retain the license to this license area?
Well, I think that, you know, first of all, let me just say that I appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts on this with everybody. This is obviously a hot button issue, and you know, the first public hearing back in January looked at our eligibility based on 2 regulations, and since then 4 additional regulations have been added. You know, I sent a letter to the select board on February 14th addressing all those regulations in detail, and I thought about summarizing the points here tonight, but I thought I'd address one other key issue that seems to be a concern for people, and that is, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about who ARC is, because there seems to be an awful lot of misconception. You know, our status in the Wellfleet shellfishing community is unique, and there could be some confusion and resentment about what it is we're doing there, not having a domicile in the town. I think that many people have written to the board and spoken to the board about the value of having ARC there. You know, for those of you who don't know the history of the mutual benefits that ARC and the Wellfleet shellfishing community share, I think it would be really easy to dismiss us as a typical outside organization looking to do nothing but, you know, reap the benefits of being in Wellfleet and taking the town's resources. And I don't think that reality is anywhere close to that. You know, we're a company that has been here since 1960 and helped to grow the shellfishing community. We're to this day dedicated to the shellfishing community on Cape Cod. We're 25 men and women, half of whom are under the age of 40. We really strive to provide employment and training for our young people so they can stay here and thrive on Cape Cod. Our hatchery is in Dennis, and we have nurseries in Dennis and Harwich and Chatham that allow us to grow seed to a particular size so that it can be purchased by growers. The hatchery in Dennis produces hundreds of millions of oysters and clams a year to support the 1,300 shellfishing jobs on Cape Cod, many of which obviously are in Wellfleet. And our employees take that responsibility very, very seriously. And that responsibility is shared by our owners. The current ownership group is the third group to own the company since 1960. It consists of 22 individuals and businesses and nonprofits, all with deep connections to Cape Cod. They came together in 2015, not to make a quick buck, but to ensure that ARC survived and that they recognize the important part that ARC plays in the success of the shellfishing community. And they realize that if ARC went out of business, there'd be 1,300 jobs affected on the Cape. So there are no big corporations in this group of owners. None of them own anywhere close to a majority of the business. It's truly an organization that is trying to do good in Wellfleet and other Cape communities, although I think a lot of people don't see that. A lot of it has been made about, why are we there? And Mr. Corbo, the town council wrote a letter explaining why we did not meet the domicile requirements. And I'd certainly be happy to talk about that later, but I think that rather than go over all the individual details, which I think we'll probably get into momentarily, I think that's all I really have to say right now. And I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. And I really hope that for everybody's sake that the select board gets enough information tonight to make a decision and put this to bed.
Okay. So Greg Corbo. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to ask Greg Corbo to basically present the salient points of his opinion. Members of the select board can ask questions just specific to the opinion issued by town council. And then the ARC will have an opportunity to respond to the opinion and any question. And at that time, we would have any questions directed at ARC from members of the board be asked to them then. And then I don't know, we'll have and then we'll, I guess, yeah, and then we'll go to the public. So yeah, that, and then we'll see. But the point is first is to just address town council's opinion, and then we'll look at the wider at the specific license area. So, okay, Helen.
Yes, I'd just like to know where in the order do we hear from the shellfish constable?
Oh, yep, sorry, you're right.
Yeah, I would personally like to hear from her after council, if that's all right.
Okay,
but it's up to
that
you.
works. So I'm just trying to structure this so that
Thank
we
you.
have a coherent meeting. Okay, let's see. Greg Corbo.
Yes, good evening. Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. My name is Greg Corbo, Town Council for the town of Wellfleet through the law firm of KP Law. I was asked to provide an analysis of the town's shellfish regulations and provide an opinion as to whether or not ARC meets the eligibility requirement with respect to residency and domicile. Before I get into explaining what my opinion is and the basis for it. I just, want everyone to understand what my role in this process is. My role in this process is to assist the board by giving an interpretation of the law and providing guidance as to what your options might be in light of that interpretation. I do not have an interest in whether or not ARC is ultimately allowed to retain this license or get another license in the future. And so I don't want the conclusion that I reached about ARC to be mistaken for some negative intent towards ARC or negative view of ARC. It is simply an interpretation of the law, and we could talk about, what the board's options are in light of that interpretation. So with that being said, what I was asked to do was to provide an opinion as to whether or not ARC meets the residency requirements of the aquaculture program in the town of Wellfleet shellfish regulations. This fell somewhat in an unaddressed area in the regulations themselves, because the regulations, although they expressly recognize the right of a corporation to hold a license, they do not contain any residency requirements or definitions as to how a corporation becomes a resident. So if you look at the regulations, it talks about having a voter registration or a driver's license, things of that nature, things that natural persons would have to prove that they are residents. But of course, a corporation cannot have those incidents of residency. So what I did was I relied on the interpretation of law in other areas as to how a corporation obtains domicile. And what the United States Supreme Court has found is that the way a corporation obtains domicile in a place is where its principal place of business is located. And that can be either through the location of its primary corporate offices, or its quote unquote nerve center, which is where it conducts the majority of its corporate activities. So, in assessing whether or not a corporation is a resident or a domicile of a particular location, you look not only at whether or not it's conducting an activity in that location, but also whether or not it is conducting its primary corporate functions, things like bookkeeping and storing its records, where the officers can conduct their meetings, where its primary address is, where it's registered with the Secretary of State. These are all factors that go into determining the domicile of a corporation. So in this matter, it appeared to me, and I would certainly, defer to the ARC representatives to explain if things are different, but it appears to me that the corporate nerve center for ARC is at its hatchery in Dennis. I'm not aware of any offices that ARC has in the town of Wellfleet, or really any other business activities that it conducts in Wellfleet other than by working this grant of license. And in my opinion, the working of the grant of license is not sufficient to establish residency, because that's not where its corporate headquarters are located or where its corporate activities are being conducted. So having concluded that ARC does not meet the definition of residency or domicile, the next thing I looked at is, well, what was ARC's residency status at the time its current license was renewed in 2016? And as you know, these shellfish regulations are renewed on or amended on a regular basis, almost annually, sometimes more than once a year. And it was a challenge between me and town staff to locate all of the various iterations of the regulations to ensure that the residency requirement in effect today is the same as it was in 2016 when ARC applied for this particular license. And the relevancy of that is that if ARC qualified for the license at the time that it applied, then it might be subject to a different standard if the regulations subsequently changed during the course of holding its license. But what I was able to find, although I could not find the version of the regulations that was in effect in 2016, I found regulations that were in effect in 2015 and regulations that were in effect in 2017. And the residency requirements in both of those sets of regulations were the same. And those regulations made it clear that in order to have a license, you had to be a resident of the town of Wellfleet. And further, if you lost your residence during the term of the license, that you would no longer qualify to hold that license. And that particular provision is significant because what we found was that when the residency requirement was first enacted back in 1987, there was a specific carve out or exception for current license holders. And some newspaper reports that I was able to review from the time suggest that that carve out may have specifically been written with ARC in mind. But somewhere along the way between 1987 and 2015, that carve out was taken away. And the regulations in effect now, or at the time that ARC made its application, made it very clear that there was no quote unquote grandfathering for those who had held licenses previously. And in fact, the regulations said that if you were to lose your residency, you would lose your right to hold the license. So on the basis of all of that, it is my opinion that ARC is not domiciled in Wellfleet, and that because of that, it does not qualify to hold a license. It's my further opinion that when the license was issued in 2016, it appears to have been issued in error. And if that is the case, then the select board has options as to how to proceed. One option would be to rescind the license. However, that may not be your desired outcome. And therefore, it is my opinion that because you issued this license and because there was reliance by the business on the granting of that license, that the board can exercise some flexibility in how it moves forward. Under the current version of the regulations, an individual has a grace period in order to be able to reestablish their residency. That is something, in my opinion, that you could apply in this case. You could also consider allowing ARC to maintain its license until such time as the board considers amendments to the regulations to address this situation, should that be how it chooses to proceed. So, I think that because this is an unusual case where ARC has been here for so long that they've relied on the actions of the town in renewing this license, that you do have some flexibility to craft a remedy here. And I'm happy to remain with you to help you, decide how you want to move forward.
Okay, so before we get to next steps, I just want to just have the opinion itself. Any questions regarding the opinion by members of the board? Okay, Helen?
Yeah, through you to Greg, if I may call you Attorney Corbo. I was a little unsure about your language. In other words, I didn't quite understand your meaning. When you described what I think is now called section 7.8.7, which is research and development projects as something that was carved out for ARC. What did you refer to as having been carved out for ARC? Which section?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. No, yes, thank you. I'm sorry if my the language that I used caused confusion. My understanding is that ARC does not hold a research and development grant. ARC in its letter to the board said as much. And based on the way that that section is written, I don't think that ARC could qualify for that, both because it's limited in term and it prohibits this commercial sale of shellfish. What I was referring to is in the regulations that were in effect in 1987, there was language that specifically recognized that the residency requirement would only apply to new licenses and not to those who had existing licenses. And as I had said, based on my review of some newspaper reports that were provided to me, it appeared that that language in 1987 was put in there specifically to acknowledge the presence of ARC and the fact that it was not a resident. But as I said, although that was there in 1987, it at some point in time between 1987 and 2015, that language was taken out because in the 2015 regulations, the recognition that the residency requirement only applied to new license holders was no longer there. And in fact, it was replaced with the new language that said that if you lose your residency during the term of a license, that you no longer qualify to hold the license.
Okay.
Respectfully, I've been doing a lot of research on this, but I did before anyway. I believe that the reason that the question of domicile was not required prior to that is simply to echo, as do many of the regulations, the Division of Marine Fisheries states regulations, which do not require, unless a municipality wishes to make it so, i.e. stricter than the states. Municipalities, according to the state, do not require domicile residence. And that's why I think it was there, that I think it was not carved out for ARC. It was just simply the kind of practical echo you have of state regs or laws in our local regulations. Thank you.
Greg, can you correct her, please?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure that I can offer a correction per se, but what I can say is that municipalities are authorized to limit shellfish grants to residents only. And as far back as I believe 1987, the town has had a consistent residency requirement, although that requirement has changed in the way that it's been applied over time. That regulation, as far as I could tell, has always been in place and remains in place today. And the regulations in place today clearly require that a person be a resident or a domicile in order to have a shellfish grant.
And
Yes.
what was the exemption that was in that was part of the regulations in 1987 when the residency requirements were put into place?
Yes, I'm trying to find the exact language. It says, okay, at that time in 1987, it was section 6.1.7, and it stated, as of the date of this regulation, all new leased or licensed grant areas will be assigned only to a person who is a bona fide domiciled resident of Wellfleet. So the language that was there then referred specifically to new leased or licensed grant areas. But if we look at the language that was in place in 2015, that language is no longer part of the domicile requirement. And at that time, it specifically said that licenses will be issued only to domiciled residents of the town, 18 years of age or older, who have knowledge, etc. And then it says at such time as a licensee ceases to be a domiciled resident of the town, that individual shall be removed from the license. The status of all other licensees will not change. If that licensee is the sole licensee, then the license shall be revoked. So to the extent that the 1987 regulations stated that they only applied to new license holders, the 2015 regulations, in my opinion, make it clear that they apply to all license holders. And if at any time you lose your residency status, then your license is subject to revocation.
Okay. Are there other questions just strictly related to town council's opinion from members of the board? Okay. Nancy, do you have any questions to town council about their opinion?
I do not.
Okay. Rick Sawyer, do you have any questions to town council regarding their opinion?
No, I don't have any questions. There's a couple of points in his letter that I'd like to address. First of all, you never really addressed the fact that one of our owners is SPAT, who is a Wellfleet organization. So I don't know what relationship that has to his opinion, but you know, as we said, you know, in 1987, the domicile requirements only specifically said that they applied to all new leased grant areas. And as Mr. Corbo said in his letter, the regulations have been amended many times since then. And by 2016, they included the provision that at such time as licensee ceases to be domiciled, a domiciled resident of the town, they can be removed from the license. But he also stated in his letter that there's an incomplete record as to the past versions of the regulation and the reasons for those amendments. So my feeling is that we need to look at precedent. ARC has never been a domiciled resident of Wellfleet. And I think that precedent can't be ignored. Each time our license has been renewed, the select board's been aware that we haven't been a domiciled resident of Wellfleet. And whenever the regulation was changed, no one ever sought to take the grant away from us. So that I believe that Mr. Corbo's conclusion is based on some incomplete information and some assumptions. You know, so I just think that, you know, the fact that we've never been domiciled and the town and the select board's known that forever, and that nobody has ever sought to take the grant away from us, that you can't ignore that precedent. So that's my only reaction to the letter. I think that he did a very good job, a very thorough job. But you know, the other one point that I wanted to point out to you is that he did say in his letter that the application of the residency requirement and our grant is, and the revocation of our grant is up to the discretion of the select board. So even though there are these strict regulations, and whether or not we meet any of those regulations in particular, it's still up to the discretion of the select board. And I strongly believe that it's in the best interest of not only this company, but also the shellfish growers of Wellfleet, that we maintain a presence there. So that's my only reaction.
Okay, Mr. Corbo, do you have any responses around the residency requirements?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Chair. With regard to the fact of a Wellfleet organization being a shareholder of ARC, that is something that I looked at and considered. However, based on the analysis that I could find, courts do not consider, the residency status of various shareholders in a corporation. Rather, they look at the corporation as an organism unto itself, and they look at, again, where is this corporation's principal place of business. So like you could look at, and I don't mean to be disparaging by this in any way, but you could look at a big corporation like Target or Walmart, right? And they have stores all over the world. But they can only have one place of domicile. And so rather than looking at, where each specific store is located, the courts look at where is their corporate nerve center, where are their corporate headquarters. And so the fact that you may have shareholders that are residents of Wellfleet, is not necessarily determinative. And as for the gap in the record, I acknowledge that there is a gap in the record. I was up front. I worked very hard with Rebecca and Nancy, both Rebeccas, and we did a very diligent search to find as much as we could, and we found what we did. And oftentimes courts and attorneys are called upon to interpret regulations and statutes, and they don't have specific evidence of legislative history. So, they use the tools that I referenced in my letter, which is, you look at the language and you look at the progression. And based on that, I arrived at an opinion as to what that progression meant. However, if someone were to find a document that said something otherwise, I would, of course, consider that as part of my my analysis. As I said, it was not my intent to exclude ARC, but I gave it a disinterested review of the regulations and arrived at the opinion I did.
Okay, Rick Sawyer, and the next steps is we'll take that up in a minute or two. But Rick,
yeah, just very quickly, I don't disagree with Mr. Corbo about the fact that our corporate headquarters are not in Wellfleet. I brought up the ownership that SPAT has in our company, more in relation to the select board having some discretionary powers, and that should be considered in your decision. That's all.
okay. All right. So, Greg, can you repeat what your conclusion was?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So my conclusion is that ARC is not domiciled in the town of Wellfleet based on the information that I have. And as such, it is not qualified to continue holding the license, and it was not qualified to receive the license in 2016 when it was issued. So the next step is for the board to decide, does it accept my opinion, and if so, what it wishes to do in terms of next steps.
Okay, and you conclude that they operate at the will of the board, essentially.
Yes, that's correct. As I said, we have to apply the regulations as written, and based on the regulations as written, there is nothing that provides ARC with an exception, in my opinion. And however, there are certain equitable factors at play here, which in my opinion would allow the board to take those into consideration and to give ARC time, either to make alternative arrangements or to seek an amendment of the regulations. That's something that is within your discretion as a board, in my opinion.
Okay. All right, so let's start discussing next steps. I think, to be fair, it'd be best to go to Nancy first, because she's proposed some. So Nancy,
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. Yes, I tried to, Johnny and Chris and I have been obviously, meeting about this, talking about this amongst ourselves and out in the community. And to us, it seemed that there was support to having ARC remain in Wellfleet, and that the majority of the people that we spoke with feel that they add value to the shellfishing industry in Wellfleet. So based on that feedback and our conversations about our own relationship with them, working with them over the years, we kind of put our heads together on potential ways of accommodating them. And I think that in order, and I've said this before, in order to be fair and in the future, you can't just make a regulation for one person or for one situation, for one circumstance. So I think we need to be devising something in a big picture sort of way. And I actually believe that Helen Miranda Wilson hit on something that might give us some leeway, and that is to update the research and development portion of the regulations, and to think not only about ARC, but are there other research entities that we might want to collaborate with in the future? And how could we devise some regulations that would allow the town, and most specifically the select board, to undertake a review of that and then permit them or allow them per these regulations. So that's one thing. And then I also believe that once we, and obviously this is the opinion of the Shellfish Department, and the opinion of the Shellfish Department is that we should find a way to accommodate them. They do add value. And therefore, if we find a way in the regulations to accommodate them, then I would take it a step further as your shellfish warden, giving you suggestions and advice, and I would craft a lease that was specific to them and wasn't identical to all of the other leases in town, because they won't be, and they never really have been identical, because of the research that they do undertake just as part of their normal operations out there. So, and the first thing that I will say is that their lease should be made non-transferable, that they could not add anybody to the grant, and they could not transfer the grant to anybody else in the future. And then the other things I brought up in my memo, as soon as Johnny and I met with ARC about doing investing money and helping us on a study about neoplasia, they came right to the table with $20,000, which is something the town would never have, and even the county is constantly looking for grants. So it is something that is of value, and I would try and keep that sort of accountable relationship going with ARC, and I would define it in an order of conditions imposed by the select board. I would really modernize their agreement with the town and look at the seed that they had originally promised back in the day, 50,000 field plant cohogs, and look at modernizing that for 2022 and beyond. So does that turn into 150,000 cohog seed plant, field plant? Or do we look at just some other type of give back to the town? And in addition, from time to time, there are issues in town that could take some a deeper dive, or it would merit a deeper dive to get some expertise that ARC clearly is able to offer. And so I would say to come to the Shellfish Advisory Board every other year. Is there something in the community that it rises up to be a project or something that ARC could lend capacity on? And have that be something else that's written into their lease, and maybe put a dollar amount on it, like up until such and such amount of money and resources or staff time or whatever it may be. But I think that we do have flexibility. I certainly am very pleased to hear town council offer the select board flexibility to craft something that makes the best sense for the town. I mean, I do believe this is an asset here. So it's in the best interest of the town and the shellfishing community to keep that entity here, and perhaps make sure that we are a town open to research and development from other entities in the future. And so by crafting a regulation and a lease that is specific with an order of conditions, to me just seems to formalize things in a way, put accountability on the situation, so that ARC is also then recounting to the select board how it has proceeded, or what projects it's undertaken and what are the results. You know, I just think that this could turn into a much more powerful and useful collaboration. And we certainly shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay. Rick Sawyer, would some sort of arrangement be something that ARC would consider?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I think before we I'm trying to think about the best way to do this. So I think before we get into that discussion, I'd like to open it up to the public. So if anybody has public comments at this point about this license and license holder, I would encourage you to meet them now, or to make them now. We have received four letters from various members of the shellfish community in support of ARC, both for what they've done in the past and also about what they might do going forward, and the value to the town. They are included in the materials in the packets that are posted on the town board. I did receive a request just before this meeting from Irving Puffer to read his out loud. It's relatively short, so I'm going to do that. It's to Wellfleet Board of Selectmen. I am unable to attend your meeting. Can you please read this letter into the record? ARC has had a shellfish bed in Wellfleet on one of my former leases for over 40 years. I was present at all meetings when it was decided to allow ARC into our town's shellfish industry. From my 50 plus years of being on the water, this is one of the best moves the town has ever made. ARC has been a backbone of this industry from day one. They have proven its value by providing local viable seed and the willingness to work with the Wellfleet shellfish farmers, making seed purchases accessible in spring when cash flow can be tight. They are constantly doing research on better ways to grow shellfish, field nurseries, disease and resistant strains, and seed producing, as well as sharing their vast knowledge. One of the oversights with ARC is that they have also provided a year-round market for Wellfleet shellfishermen. It is my belief that their very strong oyster brood stock has helped populate Wellfleet Bay with oyster set that was once dormant. I can now stress how important they are to the shellfish community, shellfish industry in this town. They should be allowed to continue as is. The pros greatly outweigh the cons. Thank you, signed Irving Puffer. And then if any member of the public has a comment they would like to make, just use the raise hand function and I'll recognize you. And then, okay. So then I guess discussing next steps. John?
Yeah.
Member of the public.
Yeah, nobody has their hand up yet, Janet. If somebody does, I'll go to them.
All right.
Yeah, I would rather defer to a member of the public if there is somebody who would rather speak now.
Nobody has their hands up. So go ahead, John.
I don't think there's any question that originally starting out under the direction of Richard Krause, that ARC was a major player in establishing what we know now as our aquaculture industry in Wellfleet, and that they did so when there was no domicile requirement. Now, with the departure of Mr. Krause from ARC some years back, that relationship did change with the new ownership, and changed even more with the arrival in 2015 of multiple new investors. From what I've been able to put together in talking with the people I've been talking to, and who have reached out to me, Wellfleet's aquaculture industry has multiple sources of seed shellfish on which to call, of which ARC is certainly one, but one of a number. In fact, it is not uncommon, from what I've been able to determine so far, for Wellfleet shellfishermen to spread their seed orders across a number of hatcheries. There's some whose names have cropped up, but from what I've been able to determine, there are at least 13 that are approved by the Commonwealth. You know, to suggest, as I've heard it done, that our aquaculture would collapse without ARC's presence on this grant doesn't seem plausible to me. I have a little bit of a problem with the suggestion put forth by the Shellfish Department that we overlook this regulation in return for receiving something from ARC. I think that doesn't strike me as a good way to do implement regulations. If you follow my drift, it strikes me as almost, you know, being paid to overlook these regulations when, you know, if there's a good reason to change these regulations, okay, we can look at that. But just being, you know, just to proceed as we have been doing, overlooking regulations, we've been doing that in Wellfleet for far too long in far too many areas of town governance. And that seems to me that one of our tasks going forward is to change that course. Trying to keep track of all this.
Nancy?
Yeah, thank you. I want to make sure that I am very clear that there's no way that I'm suggesting what you just mentioned, John, and I apologize if my communication made it seem like that. I am not saying to ignore the regulations at all. If the select board has the will to want to accommodate this situation and look beyond at future potential collaborations that could arise that we can accommodate, for example, by updating our research and development regs, then a second step would be to craft a lease that was specific with an order of conditions. And maybe the select board says, no, they don't want to do that. I'm just coming up with ideas. But first, we need to find a way to accommodate their staying in town if the select board so desires. First, we need them to be able to comply with the regulations. After that, we can talk about partnership.
Can I follow up on just what I,
Yep, go ahead.
the last item I wanted to bring up in connection with this is, if we move forward in that direction, what would stop another hatchery? And I've been given to understand that there is one or more hatcheries that are looking at what we do here this evening with a view towards this very thing, to come in here and say, well, you're letting one non-domiciled operator do this, why not us? And if we don't allow it, it seems to me we're opening the way to some serious litigation.
Okay. Helen?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, through you to John. In fact, the updating the regulation 7.8.7 that Nancy and I are working on has language that specifically addresses exactly what you said, so that it could be limited in scope and in number. But I want to say something else more generally. So in our packet, and thank you, Rebecca, for putting together the packet in the complete way that you did. One of the very most important documents is dated March 29th, 1982, and it's the application from ARC. And it states very clearly that they're coming in to do experimental growing out, harvesting, because you can't leave shellfish that have gotten past a certain class. I mean, if you want to plant beets there, you have to get the potatoes up, right? So it wasn't just because no enterprise like this can support themselves just by selling seed. It's also that what they have on a grant has to be moved out. Now, at no point anywhere in any of the documents I find, and Melissa Yao, who is a grant holder and knowledgeable, did extraordinary research and got our board all the old minutes of select board meetings about this, as well as newspaper articles about it, and Shellfish Advisory Committee minutes, which have been invaluable because you can see the progress of how this was considered. I think the most important thing I can say is this. I have, since 2003, been very aware of ARC and voting 2003 to 2006 on renewals for them, and also looking at the regulation that it was very clear they qualified under, which is the Research and Development Project regulation. At no point, and this was very clear, and thank you, Greg, for confirming it as an actual attorney, not me. At no point did they qualify in my mind for a resident, but it was also very clear because the DMF has a category for special permits for research. And the crafting of that section, Research and Development Projects, has language in it that makes it absolutely clear that they can do this and do it in addition to everything they have to comply with, just like any normal aquaculturist, right, license holder has to comply with. They have to comply with something else. They have to comply with what other farmers comply with because they sell their product, but they also qualify as research license holders. And Nancy and I have the CMR, the DMF regulation that describes that kind of permit. And a marker for that being the case for this regulation here locally, our regulation 7.8.7, is that it has a finite time. And that is one of the things that's required by the DMF. You can get a research permit and you can keep, renewing it or whatever, but it always has to have a finite time. And in fact, Audubon, when I was on the Shellfish Committee, came in and got one of those because they wanted to do that reef over there on their property, and it didn't work. But the point is that came in under that too. I also want
Well,
to
Helen,
wait.
1
I'm
minute.
giving you information.
Sorry, no, 1 minute. So, Mr. Corbo, are they and Nancy Savetto or Rick, does this license site currently operate under as a research and development operation?
Currently, no.
Okay, Mr. Corbo?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, Rick Sawyer?
Sorry, no, we don't. And I just, with all due respect to Helen, we keep kind of not following up that statement on that original 1982 letter that states that the request is for experimental plots of hard shell quahog grow out. But then it further says if the experimental plots show good growth, a production phase of quahog growth will be instituted.
Yeah.
So, we do talk about, grow out, which means growing to market size in that original letter. And I don't believe that there's been any indication in any of the board minutes from back to 1982 that states that that this lease on this grant has anything to do with research. Even though we do research on it.
A question through you, Ryan.
1 second. And do you hold a permit from the DMF for research and development for this licensed site?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, so probably not. Helen?
Yeah, so my question is, what seed do you plant on 792? You plant seed from your hatchery, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
How are you going to find out? And see, I went through this a long time ago. I thought, well, how do they find out if it's going to thrive in Wellfleet, these new strains they're developing? They're going to find out by growing it out. That's how you find out if, a species of shellfish can thrive in Wellfleet and survive diseases, because you can't grow it all the way out in the hatchery in a habitat. The hatchery is not the habitat. So clearly you need bottom in the harbor to see if what you are researching, it's you have to comply with everything that commercial shellfish, growers do, of course, annual, report, everything like that. But you are doing it for an additional reason because you have to see how it does. Is that correct? Or am I wrong about that?
That's absolutely part of it. Yes, correct.
And you're not going to find it out unless you do it in different parts of the harbor, because what can thrive over in Hadilta isn't necessarily going to thrive in Egg Island.
Absolutely.
Now, the other thing I said at the original hearing, and then I'll shut up, Ryan, I swear. On January 25th, I think it was, I said that, I'm trying to remember exactly how I put it. The main thing that has to happen here, and then I hope the select board will take a look at the language, is for the Shellfish Department to come up with language updating this research and development section. Because if ARC is to continue here, and they're growing, harvesting, selling to sustain their, business, and also to see if what they are putting on their grant is going to thrive, going to work. But we have to update that so that it works for them in that capacity. They have to do things that are in addition to what our normal farmers do. And I do have to say that frankly, there's nothing in the shellfish regulations that would allow us to waive a domicile requirement. We can't, there's no wiggle room in our shellfish regs except for one reg for us. Shellfish department has a little more wiggle room under our regs, but we can do a new section and see if we like it and then decide. And in the meantime, I think that we should simply allow this grant, whether ARC is going to continue on it or not, to be moved with the other 4, because as Nancy pointed out to us a while back, we have to wait for all 5 of them to be ready to do that. You know, it's an MIPA thing, isn't it, Nancy? Can you confirm that?
It's the license area we've already voted to move, Helen. So
This is
yeah.
just about whether or not they should stay on it. I would like to wait and consider what we can accommodate them under and see actual language and see how we feel about it.
So again, so are you currently operating this site as a research and development location?
We do research on it, but we are primarily using it for grow out and seed sales.
Okay. And you do research and development elsewhere in the harbor?
Correct.
Okay. So, Janet?
So it seems to me that it's time to update our regulations. And I think things have changed over the last 40 years, that ARC has morphed into something else, just like shellfishing in Wellfleet has morphed into something else and bigger. And that Nancy seems to have an idea of what she needs to do to update and change regulations so that it's equitable for everyone in town, and that ARC compensates the town in some way, and that there's transparency. And everyone, all the people in town can talk or give their comments to Nancy and work on this and just get the new regulations. I mean, yeah, we changed residency before, we could change it again, but we do feel that, I think one of the whatever, the dislike is that ARC is there making money and doing something, and they're not even, like, what does the town get from them? And I know some of it, but just to clarify and make some new regulations, that would be my idea.
Okay, John, before I go back to you, Mr. Corbo, you said earlier that you had some suggestions or concepts for that the town might consider for this license.
To you, Mr. Chair, no, I don't have anything specific in mind as to how the town would accommodate this particular license holder. I did speak with Nancy, I think towards the end of last week, as to how, we might be able to implement some of her ideas. But in my opinion, the best course of action to doing that would be to amend the regulations, either to have some specific requirements that allow an organization like ARC to operate in Wellfleet, or giving the select board some type of discretion to allow an organization like ARC to operate in Wellfleet. But I do not at this time have a specific recommendation for you to act on.
Okay, John?
Yeah, a couple of things. One of them is, I know that the primary focus right now is the domicile requirement, but there's another requirement that is in place that has been a cause for some contention here, and that is the productivity requirement. I've been made aware of one or more shell fishermen who have been threatened with loss of their grants for not meeting production requirements, whereas this has never been a problem on the ARC grant, even with their lack of production. Now, there's some gray area having to do with whether production of seed counts toward that. And at least one of the shell fishermen in question here did have seed production on their grant, even though that wasn't the purpose of the grant. Their purpose is to produce marketable shellfish, which they are doing. But there's a disparity here that I would like to get some more understanding of, because it doesn't strike me off the top here as being fair. And this is one of the requirements that grant holders have to adhere to, in addition to the residency.
Okay. Nancy?
Yeah, thank you. There is a group of grant holders right now that we've been going back and forth with for, in some cases, years, in some cases, a year, or anyway, I'm not going to get into that. Let me just start over. So there is a group of grant holders with which the Shellfish Department is enforcing on minimum productivity. And you will soon see some of these before you. And ARC is one of them. Certified letters went out today, and we have been in conversation. So each person will have a conversation with me, and we'll have email correspondence and certified mail, so that when I bring these to you for review,
So Nancy, that's a different topic. We have to limit the discussion to this specific license.
Okay, so this is an effort that the Shellfish Department has been working on for a number of years. It takes years to try and enforce minimum productivity per our regulations, and we try and collaborate. And so this is something that we are actively enforcing on currently.
Okay.
With ARC, among others.
Okay.
And one thing that I will say is that whoever you spoke with, John, about seed production, if the grant holder does not communicate with the Shellfish Department about the use of the grant to produce seed and show seed sales, then we don't know that. And this happened as well with ARC. And we will certainly count sales of shellfish seed, but there has to be transparency, open lines of communication. And when we conduct our grant inspections, that has to be demonstrated to us and backed up with sales receipts that are turned into the department.
Okay. John, did you have a follow-up?
No.
Okay. Janet Drohan?
Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for recognizing me. I just have a basic question to tag along with all the information that I read in the packet today, and that is, in view of the need for transparency in any decision-making, could Mr. Sawyer, could you share with us annually the amount of animals or product that you sell from your 6 or 7 or more acres in your grant in Wellfleet?
Mr. Sawyer?
I don't have the exact amount. I think that the Nancy had asked for our when we report to the state, and it looks like in 2021, it's like 28,000 quahog and 385,000, sorry, 28,000 oysters and 385,000 clams is what we reported to the state.
Okay. And your
Can I
estimate?
just clarify what that means?
Yeah, 1 second. Is that for the entire harbor?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay, so that's not specific to this license.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nancy?
I can just, yeah, thank you very much, Ryan. So ARC currently, based on paperwork that they submit to the state and to the town of Wellfleet, uses Grant 792 and 3 other grants in town. They have been using a fourth as well, and that's not for 2022. I believe that ended in 2021, but they use 3 other grants in town with permission of the grant holders, and they are all CCB 11.
Okay.
So it's impossible to discern between which grant sites. The state does not track by aquaculture grant sites. It tracks by the growing area. Thank you.
So, but for Wellfleet, we track by growing site for aquaculture licenses.
In their annual report.
Okay. And what does that show for this licensed site?
What does the annual report?
Yes.
It showed that they have been making seed sales that the Shellfish Department was unaware of.
So that it doesn't show anything in the annual report.
The
That's
annual
filed.
report this year, I included it in the packet. You know, some quahogs were planted. I think some blood clams were harvested. I'll have to go back and look at it. I do not memorize everybody's
Okay.
productivity.
Rick Sawyer.
Yeah, you know, first of all, Nancy's job is very, very difficult, and I applaud her for the job she does. We've had a little bit of disagreement as to what, I'm not even saying a disagreement, just unclear and some unclearness on what is constituted for productivity. On the in your regulations 7.12.1, it says a minimum production of an average of $1,000 worth of product per year per acre, and it goes on to say from the practice of aquaculture in the licensed area. And it's been our understanding that in the past few years, anyway, that the town only wanted market product, so fully grown product, and that we have not been doing a lot of. But it's come to our attention that it's possible to use the sale of seed, which we have not, which we have been doing, you know, we haven't been hiding it from. I want to make that clear. We haven't been hiding it from Nancy. We just haven't talked about that because we didn't think that was pertinent. But it may very well be pertinent. And if you do include the sale of seed, we more than meet the requirements of productivity.
Nancy.
Yeah, so one thing that I just want to make amply clear for this discussion tonight and for the future, you know, what the Shellfish Department wants in order to implement the regulations that the Select Board is in charge of regulating the industry. We want to see actual aquaculture production. And there has been kind of a roller coaster of aquaculture production on this specific grant. And that was because we were not understanding about the seed. I'm fine to count seed towards minimum productivity, but we want to see, the town, the Board of Selectmen wants to see that these grants are being used and that they're not being used as placeholders, as retirement packages. We want them to be used for aquaculture to continue the hardy and important tradition in this town that makes us #1 in the state. And if it's falling by the wayside and it's not getting used, the Shellfish Department is going to be enforcing on it. And yes, there have been some miscommunications between ARC and the Shellfish Department, but I'm feeling confident that moving forward, that will not be the case. And we will be able to see active aquaculture activity at any time that we walk out there. And that's what we expect for every grant in the harbor.
Okay. So let's just talk about next steps. They do not meet the regs currently. They ARC does not meet the domicile requirements. They do, I think it's acknowledged that they do bring benefit to the town. In the past, this, I would say they might not have made minimum productivity on the licensed site that was previously licensed. The new licensed area probably will be more productive. If ARC does not hold that license, it would go to a lottery for a resident of the town. But I don't know, it's like, how do you balance, I guess, things? Like I would, this is just me personally, I would entertain some sort of arrangement that is beneficial to the town for a continued operation at the new licensed area, with some pretty strict requirements in terms of conditions. If they do not, and with a short license period, so probably for a 3-year license. If they do not meet the terms and conditions within that time period, for that license area, at that point, I would really like for it to go to a lottery for a resident who will actually use it. I am kind of bothered about, to me, at the same time, regs are regs. I mean, yeah, I mean, we're not the DMF, but if you violate a DMF regulation, the consequences can be pretty severe. So that's kind of what I'm struggling with personally. But I would entertain some sort of arrangement. I am not comfortable with accepting seed, especially quahog seed that is raised and reared in Wellfleet Harbor right now. I actually think that quahog seed should not be transplanted anywhere within Wellfleet Harbor from one area to another right now due to the neoplasia issues. You're just, introducing, it might have burned out and within one area and you're reintroducing it by transplanting seed around the harbor. But that's a separate issue. But at this point, I'd like to go to the board, and I see Rick's hand up first, so let me go to him and then I'll go to the other members of the board. Rick?
Sorry, I just didn't lower my hand. I'm sorry.
Okay. John?
Yes, one thing I'd like to raise is if we go that route, and obviously production is likely to increase with the grant closer in, what would that represent by way of a competition to shell fishermen who are domiciled here? And what benefits will they bring to the table that would offset the possible negative effects of that competition with growers who live here in Wellfleet and who are working hard to try to make a go of it?
Mr. Sawyer or Nancy?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. And I think I need to make it very, very clear that we are not in competition with any independent grower on Cape Cod. We do not sell our product on Cape Cod. We sell it around the country, in Canada, and now overseas. In fact, we provide an opportunity for Wellfleet growers to sell their products overseas. Right now, some of the growers' product is going to Singapore. Shortly, some of it will go to the Netherlands to be shipped around Europe. So rather than being in competition with any growers, we are in fact not only a provider of the seed, but also a purchaser of products. Our wholesale business, as I said, sells products around the country, and we purchase some of it. We've purchased most of it for a number of years, and the majority of that comes from the town of Wellfleet, from various growers. So our wholesale business is actually a benefit to Wellfleet. Our farm and wholesale operations manager, Chloe Starr, spent an awful lot of time over the last year figuring out how to ship product overseas, and she's now quite the expert at it. And as a result, as I said, product from Wellfleet gets moved all around the world. And I don't think that without that option, that would necessarily be the case, at least as easily.
But
Hey,
Ryan,
John?
can I just follow up a quick question with,
Yep.
just to amplify on what you said earlier, Rick. Could you amplify on the procedures for getting those permits to ship overseas, like to the European Union?
Sure. In order to ship overseas, in general, all the product has to be collected by a registered shipper. And as every shipment goes overseas, it has to be inspected by a veterinarian, and to assure that the product is safe. For the last 10 years or so, the United States and the European Union have not allowed each other to ship their products overseas, due primarily to a disagreement in how the product is tested. The EU and the United States have, for the last 3 years, been very, very, very close to an agreement, and finally they came up with an agreement about a month or so ago. And as a result of that agreement, for the next year or so, 2 states from the United States and 2 countries from the EU will be able to ship to each other. 2 states from the United States can ship to Europe. 2 countries from Europe can ship to the United States. One of the states that can ship to the EU is Massachusetts. And there are only 4 certified shippers on the list to be able to ship, and ARC is one of them. So the European Union, through ARC and 3 other potential purchasers of a product, are going to open up European customers to every independent grower who wants to sell through us.
Okay, John? Anything,
I'm sorry.
any follow-up?
No, I
Okay,
left my hand mistake, sorry.
Helen?
Yeah, I just want to remind people that the kind of function that ARC is providing and has ever since they started. I said this at the January 25th hearing. I'm sorry to repeat myself, but they develop strains of shellfish in ways that can be tracked and monitored, whether through sale of seed of them, of those strains, or on their own grant, that is tailored to Wellfleet. And we might, in another situation that resembled that, be paying a contractor to do that kind of research and development. And that's one of the reasons I've always felt it was a good idea that they were here. But they need to be monitored. The town has dropped the ball a bit. ARC has dropped the ball a bit. Perhaps even the DMF has not kept track of everything. And we need to get that up to snuff, and for the board to look at a regulation that can be applied to this situation and see if we like it. And I look forward to seeing what comes out of this. Thank you.
Okay, Dave's iPhone. Can you identify yourself for the record? Once you're
Yeah,
unmuted?
this is Dave Seitler. Yeah, I think that ARC should stay, and I think times have changed and just needs to be updated a little bit, and tweaked. I think that I had some suggestions in the letter that I wrote to you guys, and I think that you guys have mentioned like a few times, like, what do we do here, and there's some suggestions in that letter. Also, I think that I'm all for ARC staying. I do think we do compete with ARC if they are sending their stuff worldwide. I mean, we all send our stuff worldwide. Every oyster that I don't know about every oyster, but some stay locally and some get shipped, it's we sell to wholesalers and they ship them around the world. And if ARC is shipping their oysters, then I'm shipping my oysters, and they're, I could sell to them, but I mean, it's just kind of like, it all comes down to price points, and I don't know. I think that there are suggestions in that letter, so that's all.
Okay. Jenny, and can you identify yourself for the record?
Sure. Hi, my name is Jenny Parker, and I'm actually speaking as a private citizen, not as any affiliation with the Wellfleet Shellfishermen's Association. My question, I think this is kind of directed towards Helen and Nancy. So back in 2019, when we all came together to protect the flats because bought and pitched in, and the taxpayers of this town appropriated $1 million to make sure that there weren't any corporations based outside of Wellfleet that could be here growing on the flats, competing with our shell fishermen in any capacity. My primary question is, why wasn't that brought up to taxpayers at that time, that in fact we do have a non-domiciled corporation here growing for market? Helen, they're not doing research here. So you really, before you guys make a movement on this, I want Helen to become really clear, not in this meeting, but in a future meeting, about exactly what research is being done here. John Wolf asked in the January 25th meeting to see research documents. Where are the research documents? Mr. Sawyer at that time said there weren't any because they haven't been doing research here for a number of years. So before anybody makes any judgments on research or anything else, I, as a taxpayer, want to see the research that's been done here, that you're justifying this. I and many other people, non-fishermen, are quite perturbed that you're actually entertaining giving an extension to a corporation that is not domiciled here. Many people have just discovered that they're actually here growing, not for research, not for seed. They're growing on our flats for $25 an acre that they're not even paying on some of these other grants, and they're selling it to market. So when you say, oh, you're not competing, I'm sorry, you're competing with my neighbor who maybe he'd like a grant. Maybe my son could move back to Wellfleet and get a grant, but you know what? No, you're here growing on the area. So don't tell us that you're not here competing with people. My other question for Mr. Sawyer and Ms. Savetta is, you said that you're growing on 3 other locations in town, 3 acres out on Hilda, Grant 792. How many other acres are you growing on in Wellfleet? Can you please answer that question? There's 3 other farms. How many acres do you have totally planted? I'd like to know that. As a taxpayer, nothing to do with the Wellfleet Shellfishermen's Association.
So we have to look at the issues specific to this license site.
Okay.
So in terms of where they might be growing elsewhere, we can't really discuss it. It's not the topic of this hearing.
Okay, so here's my point.
Yep, but the other questions.
Ryan, wait a minute.
Yep. I was going to ask Nancy to
There's a limit
respond
to how
other
many
questions.
acres people can farm on in this town.
Yep.
Right? 6 acres, 7 acres?
That they
Whatever it
could
is.
be
So there's
licensed on.
3. Can we? So I
So,
think,
Would you like me to respond?
yes, Nancy.
Okay. First of all, when it happened, when the town made the commitment to buy the How Do You Like Them Apples parcel, the Shellfish Department was not aware that ARC wasn't somehow grandfathered in. We understood that they were based in Dennis, but we thought that they were grandfathered in. They'd been here for 40 years. You know, they'd been here 35 years, 31 years before I got here. So I just assumed that they were grandfathered in.
Did you know that at that time, Nancy, that they were growing to sell for commercial purposes? Or
Yes.
that they were growing for seed or research and development? Because the public doesn't know that, and the public didn't discover that until the January 25th hearing or the Shellfish Advisory Board before that. So you have a lot of taxpayers you need to answer to on this. We are not happy. People are not happy that we put up the money to buy Hilda, and we have an outside corporation growing to sell commercially, not just on their grant, but on a bunch of grants. And I understand that's another issue, but you know what? It's really disappointing. And now, after all the effort that went into preserving Hilda and trying to protect the town, now we're going to amend regulations to allow outside corporations to come in. Because if this goes through in this new grant that we're issuing, which is not a transfer, you misspoke in that last one. This is a new grant that's being issued to them. If this gets issued, it's opening the door. And no, I don't think we've decided we don't want to change domicile considerations. Are we going to go back and give Clinton Austin his grant back that was taken away because he lost domicile? There's many issues involved with this, and I really hope the board considers all of them before they make a decision. This is a mess. This whole matter is a mess.
Okay. I'm going to go to the 508-349-0826, and can you identify yourself for the record?
Hello, this is Alfred Picard. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
I have a huge problem with ARC. If we're going to talk about all the good things they've done and all that stuff, which we seem to be doing, and all the research and all the development and all the things they've helped us with, there should be a book about the size of the largest encyclopedia in the world on any document that they've created. I don't see any of these documents. I mean, I can't find them. And, you know, we listen to the fact that they need, especially from Helen, that they need this grant to grow this stuff out on. Well, if they've been growing all this stuff out, there should be a document that they sold it all. I mean, you know, my real concern is maybe it's time that ARC went bye-bye and that we brought some other group of scientists in and start from scratch, because I don't believe, personally, that ARC has done anything at the level that they claim they have to make our harbor that much better, other than taking shellfish from it and competing against the local people in this town. I think that it's time that if you are for real and you want other people to do research and stuff, the least you should do is take the acre that you're considering giving to, or that space you're considering giving to ARC, and cut it up into 3 or 4 pieces so that other people, other schools, other hatcheries, other people with some intelligence may be able to come in and grow a better product and help us with the disease. I don't think that after being here all these years, that this year to say they're going to put 20 grand and some research into something warrants what they haven't done for all the years. And the way I look at it personally is if I give you some money now to be in Wellfleet, I would consider that a bribe unless you put it out to bid. Thank you.
Okay. Michael DeVasto.
Yeah, I'm just speaking as an individual and a member of the shellfish community. Claire, to be transparent, I do purchase some seed from ARC. I don't sell them any product. I do buy seed from other sources as well. But really, I just wanted to clarify one point that Ginny made that is erroneous, and that is that this area is not part of the Hilda purchase. This is beyond the mean low watermark. This property underlying the water there belongs to the state of Massachusetts. This is settled law. It is not part of the Hilda purchase of land. So I just want to clarify that, just so everyone understands that this these grants and where those grants are being moved from are state-owned bottom. Because once you get beyond mean low water or 1,500 feet, you move into state property. That's settled law in the state of Massachusetts. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then the other thing that we have to remember is that this license has been a license since 1987. Yes, the regulations changed. Clearly, there were no one really, after years of these regulation changes, noted that, now this grant no longer fits into our domicile regulations. It did not come up apparently over that time, but it seems pretty cut and clear at this point that they don't comply with the domicile regulations. And so I guess my recommendation as a resident to the board is that they kind of have a pretty cut and clear option to either revoke the license with some term to remove products, or to amend the regulations, or to attempt to amend regulations to make this a suitable situation as the Shellfish Constable suggested. And if that's the case, then to refer it to the Constable and the Shellfish Advisory Board to come up with a draft regulation and bring back to the Select Board. I guess, frankly, I think the discussion's gotten off topic because we're really just talking about whether this license fits into the domicile regulations or not. And that was clarified in the very beginning. So I think, my suggestion is for the, for this board as a resident to sort of move towards, what they would like to do, which seems pretty clear. They either have to revoke the license or to decide that they want to accommodate it by at least allowing a draft regulation to come back, which as a resident, I would support. They've been here since '87. I assume they were grandfathered by the fact that there was no domicile regulations in town at all when this grant was issued. And there were also other people in town that were non-domiciled at that time that had shellfish licenses that no longer do, just through the years. And at that time, people gave these up and got them regularly, and they weren't very profitable, and they were pretty difficult to make any money at. So I do know that that's the case. So that's all I have to say, and I will mute myself.
Okay, Charter Williams.
Hi, I just wanted to chime in here. I think this is all very short-sighted. It's, ARC has been a major contribution to the industry in Wellfleet and the Cape in general for decades. And without that tutelage and partnership that they've provided going back with Dick Krause leadership and in the beginning of the industry as it was expanding, the industry in town would not be what it is today, certainly. And whether or not there's research happening out there, I don't think that we need to look at whether someone's writing a paper or submitting something to a journal. There certainly is research happening, because you look at, someone who's out there growing next to one of their customers that buys clam seed from them is every way, doing research by dating the same quahog seed that they just sold to someone next to them, and looking at what are the clams doing, what are the oysters doing, how is it affecting, how is a certain batch or a certain year class of seed growing compared to others? Just because, would it be nice to have some data? Sure. And could we work on that in the future? Maybe, but I'd say that that's not the major contribution here. There's plenty of organizations that would be happy to come here and provide and put together the data based on what is happening in the harbor. And I think there already is that data, and there are organizations doing that through UMass and other teaching schools. That's not really ARC's function. Their function is to produce good seed for the industry. And that's what they've done for like 40 years now. And I think now it's very much like a Johnny come lately, that everybody wants to point fingers at the fact that they're not officially a resident. I mean, if they wanted to, they're coming before the board today, being very honest and forthcoming. They're not trying to hide behind anything. If they'd wanted to, they could have gone and created an LLC that was completely based in Wellfleet, and they would have been around the issue with the domicile problems. But they didn't do that. They're before the board today because they've been dragged before the board, unfortunately. I think this is all a complete waste of time, and it's really largely disrespectful to an organization that has been at the forefront of the industry as a whole, whether it's Wellfleet, Cape Cod, or Massachusetts, or the Eastern Seaboard. So that's just my 10 cents.
Okay, Rebecca Ruffley.
Hi, Ryan. I'm just wondering if we could try to wrap this up because the Nauset School District's waiting to present their budget and you told them to come on at 7. I respect everybody's comments. Maybe we could continue the public hearing or make a vote or however you want to go from here. Thank you.
All right. Helen, if
I was going to ask for the same thing and ask if you were ready for a motion to continue the hearing and to request the Shellfish Department to draft something that we can look at that may or may not address this issue that we're meeting on tonight.
I mean, you can make the motion. I don't know if I can support it at this time, if it's going to be about drafting or amending the regs. But I will entertain, I mean, personally, I would vote to continue the hearing.
Okay, well, how about vote to continue the hearing and see what happens? A number of us have said, and I support what Mike and some other people have said, let's see what kind of language might suit the situation or not. How about if I just made a motion to continue the hearing? And may I ask you, Ryan, when do you think it should be continued to? The future, but we need a date.
April 12th. I don't want to leave it hanging too long. I mean, that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can just say personally, I'm not a huge fan of amending the regulations. And that especially if they're not operating under the regulations that are being amended, or without understanding that they are not operating under the regulations that are being considered to be amended to yeah. So, but Helen?
Yeah, respectfully, neither was the town. I brought this up in 2017 in one of their renewal hearings. We were doing a bunch of people. I asked, the Shellfish Department was there at the time. And I said, are they complying with this regulation? And it was just waved through like, yeah, they are, whatever. It wasn't attended to by us either. But in any case, shall I make a motion to continue this hearing to April 12th?
Yeah, I'll second.
And I'd like to hear what Janet has to say.
Yep, I was going to say that next, but I wanted to get the motion on the floor. So,
okay.
Janet?
So, as I said before, this is a really big area. This has been discussed so many years. Everybody has very valid issues. Ginny, Alfred, Dave Cycler, Chad, and I've somewhat talked to Nancy about this. And I really think that the Shellfish Advisory Board, along with the Shellfish Constable and and Johnny and I just forgot his name, whatever. A lot of people should have input. It's all valid. It's really important. And I believe that this is not the venue. This is the Shellfish Advisory Board should be discussing in a public hearing and then bringing forth changes if there are any, or enforcement procedures if there are any. Okay, so I'm not going to vote on this tonight either to do anything with it. It's been going on too long and there's been no clear-cut decisions, no progress.
Okay, So the motion's been moved and seconded. Is there a roll, can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, no.
Aye.
Ryan, I.
Oh, Helen, I. Mike's not here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna have a continuation of the hearing on April 12th. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want one piece of clarification before we conclude. I have received no direction from the select board to work on anything, and neither has Shellfish Advisory, and therefore nothing will be done between now and April 12th. Am I correct in that judgment?
Would you like a motion?
Yes.
I
Or
move that
no. We'll put
I
that.
will-
All right, you can make the motion, Helen.
based on input during this hearing, I move that we ask the Shellfish Department to consider and draft possible amendments to section 7.8.7 and to ask the Shellfish Advisory Board to review it before it comes to us. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
Not aye.
Ryan, no.
Helen, I.
Okay, so with that, the Shellfish Advisory Board will have to have things ready by the 12th.
I
So-
can just say right away that can't happen. So
Yeah.
I would ask
Yeah.
you respectfully to change the date of the hearing to sometime in May to allow Shellfish Advisory and me to work on that, to give us enough time to do that. So I would respectfully ask for the first week in May. Or one of your May meetings. Or you can do it without me, which is fine.
May 3rd.
There'll be a different board.
Fine.
It's fine. I just can't commit to doing it by next week, not your next meeting or the meeting after.
Yeah.
You can have
is-
Shellfish Advisory do it.
John?
Ryan, what would your preference be to
I want to get this over and done with, which is why I
Yeah.
voted against referring it. If we go to May, the first week or first meeting in May, there will be at least one new board member at that time. Because the town election and then we'll have to get that board member up to speed. And
Not necessarily.
yeah, I would
No.
just prefer to take care of it before then. So,
So,
John, do you have your hand still up or?
well, are you suggesting that we basically vote yay or nay tonight on the renewal of the grant?
No, so we already voted to continue the hearing to April 12th. It's the second motion, which was to ask the Shellfish Department to create a draft of amended regulations and to have the Shellfish Advisory Board review and work on those. Will not meet the timeline for April 12th hearing. So I don't know.
Having a new board hear this.
Yeah. I would prefer just to have the hearing on April 12th and hopefully reach a decision then as to how to proceed. Yeah,
through you to Nancy, if I may, Ryan.
go ahead, Helen.
So Nancy, the lease that you crafted and the amendments possible, draft lease, draft amendments to this regulation have already been worked on a bit. And I'm just wondering, this is not starting from scratch. I was just wondering if, the 26th of March excuse me, sorry.
I'll do whatever, whatever you
Yeah,
guys
I
want.
mean,
I will not be here. And I can do whatever I can get done before I leave I'll do my best.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, I didn't understand there was a vacation.
Yay, there is.
Yes, good. Okay, well, something will be produced by the Shellfish Department. It will be seen by the Shellfish Regulatory Board. And we'll get to look at it and see what we think. And
We are the Shellfish Regulatory Board.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, well, yes.
The Shellfish Advisory Board.
The Shellfish Advisory Board. Yes, we are the Shellfish Regulatory Board, and it's nice to know somebody else calls us that. Thank you.
John?
No, I didn't mean to have my hand still up.
Okay, so we had a motion to continue a hearing to April 12th. Is that doable, I guess?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
do we need to amend the motion?
No, it's doable. If
Nancy?
It will be done, and I'm not going to promise that it's going to be done to the normal. It's going to be one of many things I'm juggling before I leave. I will do my best, but it's not my preferred timeline to do it in basically a week. So I'll just do my best, and you guys can take it from there. I trust you all.
Okay, so with that, I close the not close. The hearing is continued. So.
We have a motion on the floor.
No, we don't. Both of them were voted on.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, school budgets. So let's see if they want to make any corrections to our. I don't know. Who's presenting? Okay.
Arlene is going to screen share so that you guys can see their budget.
Terrific. Oh, sorry. I have a little bit of laryngitis this evening. So I'll start though, if that's okay, through the chair.
Yep.
Great, thank you so much. So my name is Brooke Clenchy. I'm fighting a cold and laryngitis. So just bear with me tonight and we'll see if we can take you through our information as quickly as we can. It's been fascinating to watch you this evening. Tough topic for sure. So on our call tonight, we've got a number of school district personnel and some of your elected officials. And so I want to just mention the fact that we have Martha Gordon, who is our chair of the elementary. There she is. I just saw her pop up. Chris Easley, who is your chair of the regional. We have Principal Mary Beth Rodman, principal of your elementary. I did send the other two home. Chris Chris actually is still on, so he's still there. I'm not sure if Keith Kenyon is still on this evening or not, because I said we can text you if we need you. Arlene, of course, is on, and she's going to help walk us through the slide deck. And Giovanna Venditti is here as well. She's our director of business and operations. So with that, I am going to really talk quickly and turn it over to somebody who can talk tonight. So Arlene, if we can just start the slide, there's Keith as well. If we can start the slide deck, thank you. And we'll go to the first page, Arlene, please. Thank you. So the last couple of years have been really challenging, particularly when you think about transitions for us. And I was thinking about that as we were listening to your discussion on your topic. And transitions are difficult. They're a challenge to navigate, and finding all the right balances is really, really hard work. If you take a look at the helm, one of the things that we've been doing pretty consistently since we started this year is we draw everything back to the ocean, and so when we were looking at even our summer workshop with our administrative team, it was all about charting the course and taking a look at our compass and the direction that we're going in. If you take a look at the helm, you're gonna see that there are a lot of different names on there. Eileen Bellistock and Mary Buchanan, this is year 2 for them. Joanna Hughes is brand new in this year. She was our principal over at Eddie, and she's our director of HR. Mary Ellen Reed is our new nurse leader. Dr. Robin Millen, who is also on here. I don't think I recognized her, but she's also on this evening as well. She's doing some amazing work in terms of our curriculum and instruction this year. And of course, Giovanna is probably the longest term member of the team right now, and that should be a familiar face to you because she's come to you every year at this time of year. So when we talk about transitions, that's really been, I think, our pivotal point, our nexus point this year, because we've been transitioning with regards to COVID, with regards to all the regulations that go with COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID. We're hoping that we're at the endemic component of this virus and past the pandemic component. With that came all kinds of different things to navigate, including things like the COVID relief funding and how that all worked. It's been a real time of challenge for us. Nauset Public Schools also began, they created a wonderful strategic plan just before I came into the district. And because as a result of COVID, it really didn't have a chance to kind of get roots and move beyond the shelf at that point in time. And it was only because of COVID, for no other reason. And so when we came in, we took a look at it and said, yeah, this pretty much needs to be our new compass. And so we've been working diligently to try to leverage certain things, go after certain goals, and use that as a point for prioritizing our work this year. Over and above all of that, of course, there's been a lot of attention that we've had to pay to social emotional learning initiatives, et cetera, this year. Again, particularly in light of COVID and coming back out of the time period of COVID that we've experienced with our children. One of the things with so many new members at the helm is kind of redeveloping the partnerships with our municipal leaders and our safety partners. We, of course, have met with all of our 4 community safety partners and our town administrators. We had an excellent meeting a couple of weeks ago where we were able to do a hybrid, and that was wonderful to have all of our town administrators in kind of the same room, between the actual physical room and the hybrid technology we were using. And their finance directors all came together, and we were able to meet with them and some of our regional school committee leadership team members, and work through and navigate some things with the new building, which of course is the next point here. The new building, of course, is another transition for us, right? As we take a look at moving into that new project, which is incredibly exciting for us. And so we're meeting regularly with what we call the school building committee, and they meet almost every other week, sometimes every 3rd week. And you can start to see the whole project coming together, and it's very exciting. It's on time, it's on budget right now, and it's exciting to watch it start to grab some legs and get the foundation going, and we're ready to move with that. We also have a major change coming up with Dr. Elsalzer leaving, and we have just announced that Mr. Patrick Clark will become the new principal of Nauset Regional and beginning in the new school year. So that's another big transition for us. So how we're going to play out tonight is we're going to be moving through the elementary budget first. And Mary Beth Rodman will talk that through, and then we'll open it up to any questions that you might have. And from there, once that's wrapped up, we'll move into the regional budget. Giovanna will talk you through that. And, you know, the principals may have some thoughts or some salient points to put forward. And then we're, you know, open to any questions you have on any of it. If we can take a look at the development process that we've taken, this is pretty standard across the district. It's also pretty standard in most school districts. You generally start in the summer before leading into September and October with your principals as you start to look at program needs, student enrollment, any special services that have to happen. You seek input from your staff and your school councils. And then moving into October, the principal generally submits a draft budget to the superintendent and central office staff, Giovanna, of course. And then we start to meet with everybody individually as we work through their individual processes and budget refinements. We meet with every single building. Along the way, we also connect with your town administrators. And if we see a glitch or we see a potential problem, we've called them and said, can we meet with you? And we've come either over to meet directly face to face with them, or with Charlie Sumner, for example, we did a hybrid meeting. In January is when we find out kind of what the house numbers are. That gives us our first glimpse of what we can expect as school districts. And that kind of helps us to reshape things, refine things, and start to move the process forward. The other thing that I think was really helpful this year is that the regional committee had its own budget and finance committee, the subcommittee that met individually, and they met throughout the process, particularly from about December right through, and with Giovanna and her staff as they refined the region budget. So that was a bit more of a robust, larger grouping that consistently met, but their budget, of course, is that much larger. So then, of course, we look to coming to meet with you, and we thank you so much for your time tonight. And thank you for the opportunity to be heard and have the opportunity to listen to any questions you might have. Once the school committee, of course, approves the proposed budget, the school committee chair, school committee principal, superintendent, and director of finance, etc., meet, which is exactly what we're doing tonight. And so we're going around. We've met already with Eastham. Tonight is Wellfleet. Tomorrow night is Orleans and Brewster. So with that, I hope that was as quick as I could possibly be. I know you've got a lot of agenda items after hours. So I'll turn it over to Mary Beth Rodman, and she can talk you through the elementary budget.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Clenchey, and thank you for inviting me here tonight. I do have a brief presentation that I would like to share with you regarding the FY23 Wellfleet Elementary School budget. Wellfleet Elementary School believes that every child matters, is unique, deserves to feel safe, and has the capacity to learn. WES faculty and staff are dedicated to our mission to prepare each student to succeed in an ever-changing world by providing a rigorous academic program that integrates social, emotional, and global awareness. WES is also committed to the NASID vision to provide enriching, diverse, and innovative opportunities to prepare students to be lifelong, self-directed learners and contributing members of society. By learning how to think critically, problem solve, and collaborate with others, students will be able to reflect on their learning, set goals for themselves, and persevere when facing obstacles in a complex world. We will foster a global perspective through authentic learning experiences, expansion of the traditional classroom beyond the walls of the school, and development of education and partnerships and opportunities across the community, the United States, and countries worldwide. The FY23 budget reflects the resources needed to accomplish this vision. The WES FY23 budget comes in at a 0.22% reduction. The budget maintains all current academic programs, interventions, and the free after-school childcare program. As a result of unanticipated retirements and resignations announced last spring and summer, most new faculty and staff were hired at a lower salary step, and one educational assistant position was for the 2021-2022 academic year only. In addition, WES does not anticipate collaborative placements in FY23. Increases are noted in specific line items, such as long-term substitutes, the salary for the school psychologist, increasing that position from 80% to 100%, and replacement of obsolete instructional equipment. Substantial decreases are noted in line items such as educational assistant salaries, out-of-district tuition, and out-of-district transportation. Many line items remain level funded. Increases in specific line items are as follows. Account number 4018, substitutes long-term. That has a dollar increase of $12,000. And that is for anticipated parental leaves. Account number 4028, instructional equipment, the dollar increase is $32,000. And that is to replace obsolete teacher and classroom desktops, laptops, hover cams, and to replace 3 smart boards. Account number 4031, instructional technology, has a dollar increase of $6,245. And that is to add a new digital math curriculum such as Eureka Math Squared. Account number 4037, salaries for guidance and counseling, excuse me. And that dollar increase is $21,034. And again, that's to reinstate our school psychologist to 100%. This year she was 80%. And that, of course, is to help with our students' SEL, their social and emotional learning needs. The last one to note is line item 4064, and that's the special ed teacher salaries. That has an increase of $32,564. And the reason for that is the teacher that we had previously had resigned, and the teacher that was hired to replace her was at a higher salary step. Reductions are also noted in specific line items, such as an account number 4011, which is contracted services, non-instructional technology. So that's a dollar decrease of $5,272. And that savings is due to district-wide purchasing. Account number 4019, salaries ed assistants, and that's a reduction of $19,083. Account number 4035 is our special needs out of district transportation. And so that is a dollar decrease of $38,189 because we do not have any Cape Cod collaborative placements anticipated for FY23. Account number 4088, preschool tuition. That is a decrease of $28,994. And that decrease is because of the preschool age enrollment. And the last one to note is number 4098. That is the special ed Cape Cod collaborative tuition. And that dollar decrease is $100,000, just over $100,000. And again, that's because we don't have any Cape Cod collaborative placements anticipated for next school year. So in summary, the regular day portion of the FY23 Wellfleet Elementary School budget increases by $109,303 or 5.24%. And the special education portion of the budget decreases by $115,478 or minus 14.9%. The total difference from the FY22 to the FY23 West budget is minus $6,175 or a minus 0.22%. Thank you.
Right.
All right. Are there any questions for Mary Beth? Okay.
So if there are no questions of Mary Beth, then we can move to the region.
Yes.
Mary Beth, thank you so much. So I'm going to turn this over to Giovanna, and she will walk through this and also speak to you about some of the drivers that we found ourselves up against, the budget drivers. So Giovanna, let's turn it over to you, please.
Here we go. Thank you, Superintendent Clenchey. Let's start with the high school. We have the FY22 budget compared to the projected FY23 budgets. As you notice, the high school budget has increased $192,750, a percentage increase of 1.59%. The middle school change has increased $144,810 or a 1.67% increase. The region only budget, the budget here is presented net of using revolving funds totaling $2.4 million to offset expenses in the region only budget. And the region only budget is up $1,423,628, or an increase of 13.84%. There are numerous cost drivers that are driving the increase in the region-only budget. These are cost drivers that are beyond our control. I'll go over those later in my presentation. The central office budget is, the change is $2,039 less than the prior year, or a negative 0.18%. Total expenses are up $1,759,149, or an increase of 5.45%. Next slide, please, Ellen. Thank you. Next, we get into the income portion of the region operating budget. The state-based aid, we will receive only $30 per student based on the state's formula. So that increases $36,270, or a 1.02% increase. The charter school aid is up $176,677, or an increase of 59.04%. This is due to the number of students leaving the district to attend charter school. We had not projected such a huge students leaving the district to attend charter. We are budgeting for 92 students next year to attend charter school, and that is what we currently have right now in the district leaving to attend charter, and that is one of the cost drivers, not only in the fiscal 22 budget, but also in fiscal 23. The state charter school aid reimbursement is based on a formula. We receive 100% in year one of the students leaving, 60% in year two, and then in the third year, 40% of those students exiting the district. The state transportation aid is level funded, so there's no increase there. The Truro and Provincetown tuition, we looked at the number of students each year. I reach out to my colleagues in both districts for an estimate. It's the number of students that will be attending the Nauset district in the fall. Right now, we're budgeting for 80 students from Truro and 20 students from Provincetown. So you see an increase of $106,653. And that is due to the number of students, and currently we will be in year 4 of a 5-year contract with those two communities, and the increase is reflective of what is in the contract. The elementary assessment for therapists, this is what we bill out to the elementaries, and this is all based on needs. Here we see a decrease of $14,058, or a decrease of 5.39%. Next slide, please, Ellen. Thank you. The estimated receipts, were level funding the amount that we anticipate receiving, and that is miscellaneous receipts, Medicaid receipts, as well as interest income. We look at what the current receipts are and we project out, so we left it at level funded. Transfer from E&D, the change here is an increase of $53,240, or an increase of 5.62%. This is the largest amount that we've taken out of E&D in my tenure with the Nauset district. So we get down to the bottom. The total income reflects an increase of $358,782, or an increase of 4.56%. The next slide, please, Ellen. So we have a summary of what the operating budget looks like. So for fiscal 23, the proposed budget that was voted by the school committee on March 10th is $34,017,151, less the revenues that we will be using to offset those expenses of the $8,235,062, leaving a total operating budget of $25,782,089, a net increase of $1,400,367, a 5.74% increase. The debt is $293,684, and that is comprised of the debt that we have on the green repair that repairs we did at the high school and the middle school roof, $235,813, and then we have a provision for $60,000 of interest to cover the bond anticipation notes that will be expiring in June, and then we will renew those bonds, as well as taking out an additional $6 million to cover the costs of the modular units for the removal at the Lincoln site and transporting them, and then reassembling them at the Nauset site. and other building-related expenses that we anticipate incurring. What this debt shows is just the interest on the bands. We had a very nice meeting with all of the hybrid meetings, some in person, some virtually, of all the town administrators and the respective finance directors, and with Lynn Foster Welch regarding the bond anticipation notes for the renewal, new bands, when to bond, how much to bond, and we will have more information for you as the project goes forward. The capital plan projects, $573,290. That reflects a 2.5% increase that's allotted by the towns for major projects within the middle school, high school, and central office. The total assessment is $26,649,063. Next slide, please, Alan. I mentioned the cost drivers that have affected the region-only budget, not only in fiscal 22, but also in 23. And we have a detailed listing. We had transportation's been affected as a result of the pandemic. We've had to increase the rates for our drivers and monitors that we pay to the collaborative just to remain competitive Cape-wide. The school choice tuition and the charter school tuition, I mentioned the charter tuition impacting fiscal 22 and 23 as a result of more students leaving the district to attend charter. And we did have more students leave to attend other Cape's high schools and middle schools under the choice program. The special education transportation in and out of district plus parent reimbursement. Here we see an increase, and that is due to the increase that we've had to pay the employees for the drivers and the monitors, as well as we've seen such a shortage of drivers that we've had to reimburse parents to transport their students as well. The special education tuitions, this is an increase, this is all based on the student's IEP and the services required. So we do not have control over these cost drivers. We've had some increase in professional development for the administrative assistants, and that is all part of the collective bargaining units that was settled. So there's a provision in there for PD for them. We also see an increase in the banking, the audit, dues and legal costs of the district. The technician's salary, that's contractual. The Barnstable County retirement, that's also outside of our control. The pension obligations for non-teaching staff, the employee share of the health insurance. Here we see the biggest increase here. Last year we budgeted for 11 months of premium. This year it's 12 months of premium plus a 3% increase. The building contents liability and auto insurance, there's an increase there. This is the last year of the increase in order to bring our values up to market. We've also seen an increase in the employee share of the retiree health insurance plan, and what is new this year is the region facilities director. We putting this on here because MSBA recommends that we have a facilities director on staff when this project commences, due to the increase in the amount of technology involved in a new building. So the total budget increases $1.7 million. The next slide, please, on. Here we show some of the decreases. We've had the total decreases within the budget of about $71,000, and that's all related to special education tutors. We looked at some of the expenses that were in the region-only budget that we had not utilized, and we removed them, and we also looked at where there was savings due to the same things that were not required, and we eliminated. We also looked at the unemployment insurance. We reduced that back to pre-pandemic period where we only had $50,000 earmarked in that line item. So overall, the increases in the region-only budget for fiscal 23 total $1.64 million. And that's my presentation.
Okay,
Thanks, Giovanna. So through the chair, we did this as quickly as we possibly could this evening. We're certainly open to any questions. And before we go to questions, I would turn to our chairs, Chair Gordon and Chair Easley, for any final thoughts from you, either one of you. And we can, Arlen, if we can move away from the screen share, I would appreciate that. We can always bring it back up if we need to. Thank you. So Chair Easley and Chair Gordon.
Thank you. And through the chair, Mr. Curley, I only have thanks to Mary Beth and Giovanna and Superintendent Clenchey for the work and the transparency and the amazing amount of effort put into the budget this year. I'm not going to talk about everything else because we'll be here all night, but I just want to thank you for a job well done, spectacular. So
thank you.
Okay, Chris Easley.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to touch base on the thought process that education has had probably 2 of the toughest years in our generation, and that there are a lot of challenges that have the school systems had to rise to overcome that we weren't anticipating and weren't prepared for, and just have done the best we can. And as a result, I think that we should thank our staff and our administration, because these times have required just an unbelievable amount of extra effort and overtime. And you know, we're all kind of in this COVID depression that comes with it, or lack of interaction with other people and so forth. And in the schools, it's just that much harder. And so they're dealing with also the outcrop of that with our children. So it's just been a very difficult time in education, and I'm very proud of how our system has addressed it and is working through it, and the services that we're providing to our students and our families.
Thank you, Chair Easley. So with that, through the chair, we're happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, I have a concern. So OPEB, so it's gone from, in 2015, about 30 million to 2020 to 50. And the OPEB trust fund is under 2 million. It doesn't look like enough receipts are being deposited to offset the increase in OPEB on a yearly basis. And I'm very concerned that at some point in the future, this bill is going to come due on the towns, and it's going to be a big one. And I don't see a coherent plan to address that, at least that's been presented. So
I'm going to tee this up, and then I'll turn to Giovanna, and you can be more specific to NASET. But your concern is a valid concern, but I would tell you that it's a concern shared by every school district across Massachusetts. It's not simply NASET, and the school districts cannot keep up with the ARC as such. And you know, as opposed to the towns that have that better opportunity to do that, school districts don't have that kind of money to do that. So what you're seeing at NASET is actually, I think, a very good faith effort to start to bring ourselves up along the way. I would say even better than many other districts that I'm seeing around the Commonwealth right now. So I think that we're doing the very best we can, to use Chair Easley's term. I think that we really are. Giovanna, do you want to just speak to it from there, but if with some greater specificity?
Yes. Going back to, if you look at the region-only budget, go back to fiscal 19, we did stop putting money aside into the OPEB fund. At that point, we were only putting in a small amount, 1% of the health insurance costs for the employees and the retirees. Once we got to fiscal 21, we had an in-depth meeting with the actuary from Siegel. She came in and did a nice presentation to the Budget and Finance Subcommittee, whereby the subcommittee asked several questions of her. And it was decided after that meeting that, obviously we could not put the recommended amount into annually into the OPEB fund, but the committee decided on an amount, $450,000. And that's what we've been putting in since fiscal 21. So we are putting in $450,000 annually into the OPEB plan. We do plan on having the actuary come back and prepare another presentation to the subcommittee with the current actuarial report. And at that point, we'll have to look at where we are and where we would like to be and make changes accordingly. But that is how the OPEB number is derived.
And I would also just add to that, that's substantially more than many school districts, much larger than Nauset, are putting forward. So I think, when I saw the number this year that Geo had put in the budget, I was very pleasantly surprised by that amount of money. So I think that Nauset's, again, doing the best that they can do right now.
Also, just a quick point. I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
No, I just said it was a great question. Thank you.
But
Go ahead, Chris.
A quick point on is that, so we were, I gotta admit, a little surprised that our liability went up so much. And during COVID, it was difficult to get people in and get the interaction going on. But I mean, our understanding was because we have a regular payment program going in and we have a process in place that we were supposed to get a better result from the actuary, and that did not happen. So the Budget and Finance Subcommittee is scheduling or having the actuary come in to have a discussion so we have a better understanding why what we anticipated to happen has not happened. And if need be at that point, then we would make adjustments or move forward to make some adjustments in the amounts we request from the towns forward.
So in 2019, the OPEB outstanding was 39,433,000 and change. 2020, it was 49,245,000 and change. If you're putting in 450,000 per year into OPEB trust fund, you're only funding it by 4.5% approximately. I mean, that is a significant difference. And I don't know, maybe you're not making other towns aware that this is probably going to be an issue, because I'm sure most towns would rather start programming costs over time rather than having this cost continue to balloon. It's like paying a minimum balance on a credit card. You're just falling further and further behind. So Giovanni.
Yes, I have the most recent OPEB number as of June 30, 2021, and that is $36,949,151. We just received the report from Siegel not that long ago.
I just a quick note of interest too. I think that you'll see that number will go up and down. It won't just simply go up and balloon. You'll see it go up and down.
And this information is provided on the dashboard report. I'm looking at the most recent report that went out for the period ended February 28th, and the updated information was on that report.
Okay. I mean, personally, I would like to see a more fleshed out plan as to how to address unfunded OPEB liabilities, but that's just me. Are there any other comments from members of the board?
I have a question. I noticed that I didn't go into it in such detail as you have, Ryan, so thank you. At this point, it would be hard to adjust that. Is that correct? through you, Ryan.
Adjust what?
Well, I'm asking probably Ms. Venditti. Adjust the OPE, God, the initials.
The OPEB number?
Yeah.
OPEB, yeah.
OPEB number. Yes, thank you.
Well, your budget has already been approved by your committees. And so I would say it would be
That's my
something that you would look forward to for next year, if that is, the route that you want to take. I also would encourage that you wait and see what the actuary says to the Budget and Finance Committee and see the direction that they point you in.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, is there anything else? Okay, so I move to approve the school budgets as presented.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
And I,
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I'm trying to, I didn't mean to put a heart on my picture.
Motion carries 5-0.
Yeah, sorry.
So use of town property, and thank you for your time tonight. So.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate it.
Have a great night. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, National MS, Emily Rivera. So, sorry to make you wait throughout a long meeting, so.
Nothing like a good shellfish debate.
Yeah. I don't know. Hopefully you don't have them in your town.
Oh.
So Emily, why don't you just do a quick presentation?
Sure. So we're holding our annual Bike MS Cape Cod Getaway. It's our charity ride that takes place over 2 days. We start in Quincy, we overnight at Mass Maritime Academy on Saturday, and then on Sunday, we'll ride from Mass Maritime Academy all the way down to P-Town for the finish. We're hoping to raise, I think the budget this year is about $2 million from this ride to go towards national research, advocacy, and services for the about 1 million people that are living with MS in the country. So I can't remember what year we're on. I think we're in year 30 something for this event. So it's been a long-standing event, and the town of Wellfleet has been wonderful with allowing us to ride through on Sunday morning from, we're typically between a town of, around 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Riders follow all rules of the road and ride single file. And of course, we ask for police details in, dangerous turns or intersections, and where they advise us to have them. And we typically have a rest stop at Wellfleet Elementary for our riders. So that's, it's just a kind of a 1 day through the town in the morning to the mid-afternoon.
Okay. Why do you not use the route that other rides use that takes the bike trail rather than crossing the highway at West Road?
At West Road?
Yep.
I think it's just due to, so when we make this route, it's also due to where, like the way the mileage works on the amount of mileage that we're allowed to have laps between rest stops, because it's a charity ride and it's not like a race. So we try to keep it every so often. So sometimes we have to tweak our route to be able to provide the support that we need at that point. And that's kind of where Wellfleet Elementary falls. Is there a specific, you'd want them only on the bike path?
So West Road is at basically close to the town line with Eastham. There isn't really, the other charity rides use the bike path to get down to LeCount Hollow Road. The crossing by using the bike path is a protected crossing. It's a tunnel underneath the highway, as opposed to an unprotected crossing at a busy section of highway at West Road. I would say that the bike trail option is easier for bikers as well, because they're not riding along the side of the highway in that section either. So, Janet?
Do I have my hand up?
Yep.
Yes, okay, well, I'll ask it now. So I see that Chief Polly and Officer LaRocco are on the meeting, are at the meeting. And these events are all great, good causes. I'm just wondering, it seems we get more and more every year, and not that many, but we are having 4 this year possibly. And I just wanted to know if we are getting complaints from neighbors or people in town. I wouldn't want to stop them at all, but I just want to know what the feedback is, if any.
Chief Polly or Lieutenant LaRocco? Is Chief Hurley on as well?
He is not. He's on vacation, I think, but I'm not, no, I don't know if he is. I shouldn't say that.
Yes, good evening. This is Lieutenant LaRocco. Chief Hurley is away at this time. We have had no major complaints with the MS bike ride in the past. They have always crossed at West Road. Again, I'm not sure the exact reason. As Emily mentioned, it may just be mileage, or I'm not exactly sure. But we've never, I mean, it's always been a traffic issue on Route 6 because we have to stop traffic to let them cross, and we usually do that in groups. But for the reasoning, I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. Chief Polly, did you have anything to add?
Mr. Chair, just that we've had very little issues with this particular event. It seems to be very well organized. You know, at this point, it's not a concern. Thank you.
Okay. Helen?
Yeah, I have a motion when you're ready.
Okay, what's the motion?
I move to approve the use of public roadways throughout the town of Wellfleet to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society on June 26, 2022, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for a fee of $500, conditional upon permission from the school to use their parking lot and getting a detail from the police department. The roadways used during the bike ride are to be returned to the pre-ride conditions with the approval of the DPW director.
Okay, second.
Second. Oh, you seconded, right? Okay.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
Discussion.
Okay, 1 second. Mike?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is this something that we really need to be charging $500 for when they're paying the public safety officers? I don't know how much this event brings in, but it's for a good cause, and I'd be amenable to reducing that fee if the rest of the board sees fit.
$2 million.
2 million they raise?
Yeah, I have Ryan, I have a question.
Yep.
Yeah, I just, what I thought was they pay for their police detail. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, I've said this before. I said it last time, like an old curmudgeon. You know, if the police department and the rescue department, you know, fire department say, we can handle this in that kind of season, I accept that. But, you know, that's officers that are, you know, committed to something. They can't just rush off somewhere else.
So
If they want to do it, it's fine with me.
So I would just say that we adopted a standardized set of fees so that we could avoid these debates. So at this point, the motion's been moved and seconded. So I would like a roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Don, aye.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, and then I would just respectfully request for the MS Society to look into utilizing the bike path route in future years. It's a much better route than crossing the highway at West Road. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, New England endurance events. Kathleen Walker.
There we are. Make sure you can hear you. Thank you very much for having us
tonight. I know it's been a very long night for you all. So thank you for sticking for sticking with us. We have the SOS Cape Cod Triathlon. We've been having this race 2019 last year, and we're requesting that we can hold it again today, or excuse me, this year. Our designated charity is the United Way of Cape Cod. Last year, we raised over $3,000 for them. This year, we wanted to be able to do something to give back to the town of Wellfleet. And so I did have a discussion with Suzanne Thomas a while back and asked what the needs were as far as the beaches are concerned, considering we're using 3 of your beaches. And she had suggested that sometimes it's difficult for Wellfleet youth to be able to afford the recertification or the certification for lifeguards. So every lifeguard in the town, of course, has to be certified by the Red Cross. It's usually around $400, and that's a lot for for some of our youth.
Yeah.
So we will be giving 2 scholarships for for only for the Wellfleet youth, not, some kid that's coming from somewhere else. The idea is to be able to help locals. So we will be doing that as part of our, I'd say call it a charity, but, as part of our giving back for this race. I know that you all have a packet. And so, as a reminder, we start at Mayo Beach. The bike continues on through Truro and Provincetown, and then ends up at Collins Road, of course, still in Truro, and then they bike run through the National Seashore. And they are hitting 3 ponds, Gull Pond, Great Pond, and Long Pond along the way, ending at the Lawrence School.
So I move to approve the use of Mayo Beach, Gull Pond, Great Pond, Long Pond areas in the Wellfleet Elementary School parking lot and field on June 4th, 2022, from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. for a fee of $800, and for all areas used during the event to be returned to the pre-event conditions with the approval of the beach director and the DPW.
Second. What?
What, Helen?
Well, and with approval, there are conditions on the back, and they're pretty, they're expensive conditions, so.
I mean, the details are required. You don't have.
I like to put it in the motion just to make it legal.
It is legal.
If it's as presented in the packet is all you need to say.
Yeah, that would be fine.
As printed in the packet.
Second,
Okay.
Helen.
Roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Don, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay. Next one.
Thank you.
The swim. Thank you. Swim for life. Who is
Getting there.
who's here for it?
Jay Critchley was
Oh,
on.
there he is. All right, I found him. All right. Can you unmute, Jay? You should have a notification that says you can. Okay.
Hi.
Now you're good.
Thank you. The first shall be last and the last shall be first. It's great to be here again. Thank you. Thank you all for supporting the Provincetown Swim for Life. We're requesting a 3rd year use of the Gull Pond. It's been a great success, and it does provide an alternative to people who just don't want to swim in salt water and be, endangered by animals and other things there. And as you know, there's a lot of organizations that provide services to people in Wellfleet. Aid support group helping women, Outer Cape Health, Children's Place. This is for a morning, it's a morning event. I believe I put 7 to 11 in the morning on the 10th of September. Limited to 50 swimmers. And the money, of course, goes to these beneficiary organizations. There's 11 organizations.
Okay, I move to approve the use of Great Pond for the Provincetown Swim for Life and Paddler Flotilla event on Sunday, September 10th, 2022, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. for a fee of $300, and for the pond and the surrounding areas to be that are used in the course of this event to be returned to the preconditioned events with the approval of the beach director.
Ellen, second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Don, aye.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, licenses, surrender of annual liquor license from JB's Pizza and Bar.
Well, thank you, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Sorry.
welcome.
Oops. That
Uh,
date is not Sunday. So do you want it on Sunday or do you want it on September 10th, which is a Saturday?
Hmm.
I'm looking at my calendar.
Jay,
You asking me?
yeah.
Do you want it, the event on a Sunday or Saturday?
Oh, it's a Saturday, the 10th of September.
Okay,
Okay.
so Saturday, September 10th.
Okay, but the date is right. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
okay. I move to approve the surrendering of the annual liquor license from JB's Pizza and Bar.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Don, aye.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, business, annual warrant. So I move to approve the signing of the 2022 annual town election warrant.
Ellen, second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Aye.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Process for aquaculture license forfeiture. Are you going to recuse yourself from this, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right.
I officially recuse myself from this.
Okay. Is Nancy still with us?
Yes, yes, she is.
Sorry, I'm getting tired.
Yeah, long day.
Yeah, well, I don't want to put off anything right now because,
Yeah.
Nancy, he's still with us?
It's back on. It's back on.
Okay,
Bear with me 1 minute, please.
yep. And so this is not a discussion of any specific license itself, it's about process, I guess. And how the process will happen, because there hasn't been one for a while, I guess. So Nancy?
Yeah, sorry about that. There were some people that said they wanted to tune into this, so I was just trying to let them know. So I went back and looked through the actions that have happened regarding revocation, at least, between myself and the board. And what I have done is to prepare a memo for you and then list it as a business agenda item, and then you have voted on it. And you could look at the minutes from the July 10th, 2018 meeting to look for this precedent. I agree with Ryan that we need to have a process that we all are aware of so that it just makes operations easy. And I hope you had a chance to read my memo about, we basically have two options. One, I could just let you know, and this would be different from the way we've done it in the past. I could, it kind of happens automatically in the regulations, and I could pen a letter that would be sent to Jeannie Mack or the principal clerk, because that's the keeper of the leases, and obviously the select board is the regulatory authority, and town administrator. And then the other, and then it would just be done. It would be a letter that I would let you know, and it would be done. But one of the things that I noticed when I went back through the regulations is that there are times when the select board also then lets the DMF know that a commercial shellfishing permit has been revoked, or perhaps that a license has been revoked. So I would just kind of stick with what we've been doing until now, which is that I bring it to the board as a business agenda item, and the board, as the regulatory authority, revokes the license or the shellfishing permit, as case may be. And then if necessary, I would prepare a letter for you to then sign and send over to the Division of Marine Fisheries, which is how we've done it in the past.
So we are only discussing the license forfeiture, not the revocation. There are two sections in our regs that call for forfeiture. And they have a different, they even have a different appeal period than for revocations. To me, a forfeiture is more of an automated process. It's like a team that shows up with fewer than the allowed number of players, and they forfeit a game. Revoking denotates an action that needs to be taken, whereas forfeiture doesn't. The way that the regs are written would seem to say that the process is that the shellfish constable would, it's primarily around minimum productivity. The shellfish constable would write a letter that goes to the license holder. The license holder then has 14 days from the receipt of this letter to appeal the determination made by the shellfish department that minimum productivity is not being met. At that point, and if they do not appeal within that 14-day period, the license is forfeited. I think that's the best way to do it. I have separately also asked SAB to look at adopting or if they still thought that 14 days was a good period, or if we should just make all the appeal periods the same. But
I saw that.
What
are the thoughts of the board?
What did Nancy just say, please?
Yes, Ryan emailed the Shellfish Advisory Board asking whether he felt that it would be better to have consistency, a 30-day appeal period for everything in the regulations. And so he asked Shellfish Advisory to take it up.
Yep.
So, may
just
I?
as an individual on it, that was pretty clear, Helen. So, yep.
Yeah, I completely agree with that process, and also having it be consistent throughout for a lot of reasons, and also to make it a little longer, because I've gone through the experience before, and sometimes the aggrieved parties who want to appeal, it would be better to have it 30 days, because that would allow us 2 meetings to get it on an agenda if they want to appeal. And that's the number one reason to have it be longer than 14 days.
Yeah.
Because-
Can I just
Well,
interrupt?
Yep.
The appeal period is from when they're notified to when they're allowed to request a public hearing. The public hearing can happen at any time. They just have 30 days to request the public hearing.
Ah,
They
that
have,
changes things.
well, they have 14 days to request public hearing under the forfeitures. They have 30
Correct.
days for for it being revoked.
I think it should be
For the
considered.
new regulations that we just put in, there's 3 instances. There's the 2 new regs that we just put in about domicile and exception to domicile. So both for shellfishing permits and shellfish aquaculture licenses, if the shellfish constable / department were to determine that somebody didn't meet domicile requirements after the 18 months, then that person has 30 days to ask. Those were just added in this past fall, right? So they have 30 days to request an appeal. And then there's one other place in the regs where you have a 30-day, and I'm trying to remember what it is. But I don't have my notes here. I left them in the office.
Okay,
But-
so Ryan, I can just
Yeah.
deliver my
Another
opinion. I
place
think
where
it
it
should
says-
be consistent. Thank you.
Yeah, so
30 days.
yeah, but let's just, we're not talking about that part right now. If we did, we'd have to advertise a public hearing for it if we were to amend it.
Oh, I'm not saying we should now. No.
Yeah, but this is about, so, Nancy, since you brought it up earlier in the meeting, can you just talk about, some of the work that the shellfish department's been doing around, minimum productivity?
Yes, even though it's not part of the, just in a general concept.
It's very general concept, just so that,
Yeah, so.
because
we've been-
it's about the license forfeitures.
Okay, so with let me just back up for 1 second. So there's 2 instances of forfeitures, and both are reflected as well in state law, chapter 130, and I have included those sections in your memo. So one is if you don't pay your grant fees by August 28th, because they're due on February 28th. If you don't pay your grant fees within 6 months, then you forfeit your license. And I think it's important to understand, like Ryan's saying, what does that mean? Okay, it means that the shellfish department is just going to simply inform and let people know, let people being the select board, the principal clerk, and the town administrator that this is happening, and DMF. That's absolutely fine, and it seems simple, and that's what I'm feeling like the direction may be going. Now, if we go and talk about the process, this is a separate discussion about the grant minimum productivity oversight that the department has been doing for the past 3 years. Basically, since I started, we've been doing grant inspections for the first time, and we have been noticing that there's some grants that don't seem to have real aquaculture being practiced. There might be 6 racks with 6 bags on a rack that just sit there all year. I never see the person go out to the licensed site. I never see bags being broken down or worked. It's almost like it's a placeholder. And we want to make sure that the regulations are being followed. So we've gone through with these different grant holders. We've done a compare of the inspections to the grant reports that they filed. And because we don't actually have any information about sales, and our regulations state that it is production. So when I interpret those regulations, production means going to market. The first 3 years, you can have investments in seed, in gear, in equipment. After that, starting in the 4th year, you have to have production. So how do you measure production? You measure it by product going to market. And so we reached out to different grant holders, asking them to get their data from the state on sales, because we don't have access to that, to prove that they have had met minimum production. And it is $1,000 for an acre. And so I think about 7 letters went out today as there's been one other that's also already gone out about minimum productivity. And they will have, per the regulations, 2 weeks. And we have included the name of the person to call with the phone number and the extension to request a public hearing. So I expect that these will come before you and we will talk about them. I would like to talk about them as a group.
Okay, and they are certified mail? The
Correct.
letters? Yep,
Return receipt requested.
okay, and
Just like
they,
I did with the one that I forwarded earlier.
yep, and they go to all the license holders on a site?
Correct.
Yes, okay,
If they don't live at the same address, they each get a separate one. If they live at the same address, then they get one letter addressed to both people.
okay, so I think the best process is that, you know, they have their appeal period, they file the appeal, we hear it in a public hearing. If they do not file appeal, the license is forfeited. And I don't think that we necessarily need an agenda item on a forfeited license until it's appealed by one of the license holders. So
Okay.
so that's where I'm getting to. John?
Quick question just for clarification. Did you say you can't get, through you to Nancy, you don't have the production figures, you get those from the DMF? The dollar figures?
Yeah, if I have not seen signs, visible signs of aquaculture, if I have not seen people working the grant, and it's not just me, it's Johnny and Chris, there's 3 of us out there every low tide. If we don't see activity on grants, it's a red flag and we start tracking it. So, but I wanted to give people the benefit of the doubt. And so this time, because there was a few of them, we asked them to go to the state and they can give us their data. ARC did. And we have somebody else who didn't have data, but put together a whole plan. Those people will not be coming in. Well, ARC might be coming in front of you because of the seed issue that we didn't know about. Just, I felt it was important to discuss that with you guys as the regulatory authority about seed being counted towards production. I think there's other grant holders that will be interested in that in the future.
So all I was asking was, in the event that you notice a lack of activity, you then go to the state to get the sale, the actual production information or lack thereof.
I can't go to the state. I can't go to the state. The grant holder has to petition the state for his data, his or her data.
Oh, okay. But I mean, that data is not something you would have. They have to go to the state for that.
And it's their private business information, so they can request it. And nobody did, except for ARC.
Okay.
Okay. Helen?
I very much agree that we shouldn't have it come before us unless they appeal. And that is, you know, the way in which the shellfish regulations are normally enforced, you know, brought to bear. The other thing is, Nancy, you left out the full title of this section, which is, what is it? Evidence of productivity or whatever. And then the rest of the title for the section, use it or lose it. And that's been on there for a long time. And there have been places that have not been worked for a long time. And I'm really glad you're beginning to deal with this because it's a precious resource. And if somebody isn't using it, let's let somebody else use it. Thank you.
Okay, so I think it would be best to have a motion just so it's clear for in the future and it's reflected in the record. So I move that the, oh, I didn't think of this ahead of time. Helen, do you have a motion?
Hey, I'm as bright.
Maybe.
How about Nancy?
Nancy?
I could try just from my memo and then
Yep.
you guys do what you want with it, but I move that that when a grant is forfeited per regulation 7.12.2 or 7.13.3, the Shellfish Constable will notify the grant holder, the select board, and the principal clerk and the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries that the license has been forfeited. That was
Second.
not very good.
I move what she said.
And that the select board will discuss any that are appealed. I don't know.
That's
something.
in there.
That's already in the regs.
That's in the regs?
License
Okay,
before-
if that's already covered,
Yeah.
all right, that's what I wanted to make sure of.
Don't put ideas in their head.
Okay, so did you move it, Helen?
Yeah, I said I move what Nancy Chavetta just said,
So
what the
second.
Shellfish Constable just said.
Can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen and I. Thank you, Nancy.
Recused.
Yep, you're recused.
Thank you for the clarity. You will be getting one letter. You'll be getting two letters actually, but only one of which would go to a lottery and the other one, I'll just, if I can quickly brief you just so that you understand, there was an offshore grant, believe it or not, kind of in the Duck Harbor, Cape Cod Bay area. And it had not been used for a number of years, including my entire tenure. And last year, the grant holder decided he was not going to pay the grant fees on it, thereby forfeiting it. And so I'll just do a formal thing to document that. And that way Jeannie can take it off the books. The principal clerk can take it off of the books. And that one is way too complicated. And if he couldn't make it happen, nobody's going to make it happen. So that will just go back to the wild.
Yep.
There's never even been a buoy out there. So.
Oh, and if it's not used for 2 years, it has to go back to its original state, according to the DMF. Sorry, Ryan, to jump in like that. That's what Chrissy Petipus told
And
me.
the other thing, yes,
go
and the
ahead.
other thing is that the grant lottery that I announced would be coming up for 9516 is going to have to undergo a biological survey because
Okay.
it hasn't been used. So stay tuned. We're working on it.
Okay, select board reports.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Amy?
Nancy.
Or can we just,
Oh, Rebecca.
John?
Yeah, if this is the proper venue, for a suggestion going forward, and this bears on the hearing we had earlier, that this might be a good time for people, for us and for others to consider the viability of seeking grant money. Perhaps the Shellfish Department could do this too, seek grant money towards establishing our own little hatchery. And this is an area where perhaps, depending on the outcome of the upcoming hearing, where ARC could be, partner in some way on this. There's no reason, we're told that we have that we're highly dependent on other hatcheries. What's to stop us from developing a small one ourselves to supplement these hatcheries, especially in the, given the knowledge that every now and then a hatchery suffers a die-off or an equipment failure or whatever, and stresses the output of the other hatcheries. This could provide a useful shock absorber for us. So I just wanted to put that on the radar.
Yeah, Mike, I'd prefer not to get into discussion on that right now.
I wasn't going to, I was just muted and I just wanted to unmute myself, but I couldn't, so that's all. But yeah, I was just gonna make a point of order that that's not necessarily a select board report.
Yeah, it'll be
topic.
future topic, yeah. Any other reports? Okay. I don't think so. New business, there isn't any.
I jumped the gun on it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Correspondence and vacancy. Is there anything that anybody would like to address?
Yeah,
People aren't happy about 1065 State Highway, so.
vacancy report, we filled our town administrator position, hopefully.
Yep.
I know you mentioned at the beginning, but anybody who missed that, the select board made a selection for a new town administrator, Richard Waldo.
Helen?
Yeah, it's future concerns. I'm, waving my hand around 4 times. Future concern, I have one.
Future concern, minutes.
No, future concerns comes before minutes, respectfully. Topics for future discussion. Sorry, it's called something else now.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yep.
Question is, can I say something at this point?
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, so there's an important thing that we have to determine. And we need to talk about it, even though it's a town administrator appointment. Traditionally, throughout all the assistant town administrators, the ATA has been the person to, in the case of affordable accessory dwelling units, to monitor and administer and, vet them every year. And now there are some of those units still, but they don't happen. We've taken that off the books, but we have ADUs. And in the language of that zoning bylaw, there is also an agent, I'm quoting, appointed by the town administrator to monitor and administer them. Now, I was told by the person who was with us before Charlie, when I asked her if the new ATA had been, that had been included in her job description, she'd been told about it and confirmed, had she been confirmed as such? And I was told yes. And then when I asked Rebecca quite a bit later, Rebecca said she hadn't been. So right now, we don't have such a person. And in the meantime, we have the ADU bylaw on the books. We have AADU bylaw, gone, but we have units. And there needs to be somebody doing that. And the town administrator needs to appoint that person. And it has to be someone who's able to deal with personal information in the event that they're being vetted affordably. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there as something we have to act on pretty soon. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's not up to us to act on it. Rebecca?
Thank you. Through you to Helen, even though I'm falling asleep, Helen, thank you. There's somebody that's already been appointed and it's Jim Badira, and a letter already went out to him. And I thought Charlie told you that, but I guess not. So I can send you a copy of that tomorrow if you want.
Ryan? Yeah, the thing about that is we were told very clearly that that wasn't the building inspector's job.
I mean, it's a town
Let's not do it now.
Yeah.
We're not discussing this. Can we please move on?
It's the town administrator's appointment. So,
Yeah,
okay,
there's confusion about that. That's okay. Let's go. Let's keep-
minutes. All right, we have minutes for, we can't move on the minutes of March 17th because they're not listed on the agenda. So sorry about that. But for the other two, we can.
They're on the agenda online, Ryan.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
I mean, you don't have to be on them if you don't
I
want
did not
to.
read
but-
those ones. I didn't read those ones.
No worries. You guys can wait. I was just trying to get them in there so that they were done.
Okay, so I move to approve the minutes of March 8th, 2022 and March 15th, 2022 as printed.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen abstain. But
Okay,
thank you, Rebecca.
so that just leaves the minutes of March 17th that I
Ah.
haven't read either, so I prefer to take that up later.
The March 15th meetings?
March 17th.
Can I move to adjourn?
Sorry, Mike.
What about the March 15th meeting minutes?
I moved the minutes
of
for
them?
the 8th and the 15th.
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch that you had moved both of them. Okay,
Yep.
that's fine.
Okay, so I'll second Helen's motion.
Michael, aye.
Don, I.
Janet, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I love you all. Goodbye.
Good night.